This is the one where the underdog stopped being the underdog. He stopped pretending, stopped begging for acknowledgement, and started rewriting the fucking map. Every rival, every monster, every strongest got reminded what real power looks like. No plot armor, just an emperor deciding the game was over.
The night Naruto Uzumaki was born, three forces collided that should never have existed in the same moment. The first was raw life chakra, the primal energy of creation itself, surging through Kushina Uzumaki's body as she screamed on the delivery table inside a barrier seal, her red hair plastered to her face with sweat, her fingernails digging grooves into stone. The second was the Shinigami, the death god summoned by Minato Namikaze's Reaper death seal, its spectral arms reaching through the fourth Hokage's chest. Cold, fingers wrapping around the nine-tailed fox's chakra and dragging it toward the infant on the altar. The third was the layered spatial dimensional jutsu holding the entire operation together, Minato's Hiraishin markers, his 8-trigram seal, his dead demon consuming seal, all operating simultaneously, bending the fabric of space around a single screaming baby like the universe was folding itself into an origami box. Three forces: life, death, and the space between them. They hit each other at the exact same microsecond, and reality cracked. The crack was invisible to everyone present. Minato felt as a cold shiver down his spine that he attributed to the Shinigami's presence. Kushina felt it as a sudden silence in the chaos. Half a heartbeat where the pain stopped, and something else rushed in to fill the gap. The Anbu perimeter guards felt nothing at all. But the crack was there. It punched through dimensions that the shinobi world had never mapped, through layers of existence that chakra could sense but never reach, down and down and down into something vast and formless and screaming with accumulated psychic energy. The warp, the imperium, the ocean of souls that exists beneath every reality like groundwater beneath soil, and inside that ocean, scattered across eternity like shards of a mirror broken 10,000 years ago, the fragments of a soul stirred, the soul of the master of mankind. 38,000 years of accumulated existence. 10,000 ancient shamans who had once agreed to die together on the plains of Anatolia, merging their souls into a single being of impossible psychic magnitude. A man who had walked among humanity since before they invented fire, guiding them from the shadows, waiting for the moment they would need him most. A man who had revealed himself as the emperor of mankind, conquered the techno-barbarian warlords of a ruined earth, built an imperium that stretched across 1,000,000 worlds, created 20 sons from his own genetic template, launched a great crusade across the stars, and then watched it all burn when half his sons turned traitor. A man who had sat dying on a golden throne for 10 millennia, his body a withered corpse, his soul the only thing holding shut the gates of hell. That soul found the crack. Those scattered fragments rushed toward it like water finding a drain, reassembling themselves as they fell through dimensions that had never been mapped by imperial science or shinobi jutsu. They poured through the gap and into the seal and into the body of a screaming, orange-haired infant whose umbilical cord had been cut 30 seconds ago. Minato Namikaze died believing he had sealed a demon into his son. He was half right. The Kyuubi was in there, but so was something else. Something older than the fox, older than chakra, older than the sage of six paths and every myth the shinobi world had ever told itself. The baby stopped crying the moment the soul settled in. His eyes opened, blue, infant blue, the color of a clear morning, and then for just a fraction of a second, the medical ninja holding him would later swear under interrogation. Those eyes flickered gold. For 7 years, Naruto Uzumaki lived in a fog. The mortal brain of a growing child was never designed to contain what had been poured into it. His skull held memories that predated human civilization by millennia. The taste of ash on the plains where the first shamans died, the sound of thunder weapons firing across the wastes of a ruined Terra, the sight of a golden fleet burning through the void between stars. These memories did not come as clear images. They came as nightmares, as whispers in languages that made his jaw ache when he tried to repeat them, as a constant, grinding sensation that the world around him was small, that the buildings were made of paper, that the people walking past him were asleep and did not know it. The villagers saw a demon brat stumbling through their streets with blank eyes and a feral look on his face. They whispered about the QB. They clutched their children close when he walked past. They threw him out of shops and refused him service and painted words on his apartment door that a 7-year-old should never have to read. None of them understood what they were looking at. Naruto himself barely understood. He knew he was different. He knew the whispers in his head were real, that they carried weight and meaning that he could almost grasp, like trying to catch smoke with his fingers. He knew that when the villagers hit him and the pain came, something inside him stirred. Something massive and ancient and furious, pressing against the inside of his skull like a sun trying to break through a paper wall. The wall held for 7 years. It broke on October 10th. The QB festival was in full swing. Lanterns lined the streets of Konoha, paper foxes hung from doorways, and the village celebrated the night their 4th Hokage saved them from the demon. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. Naruto was running. 3 men and a woman, all civilian, all drunk on festival sake, all carrying the particular breed of hatred that only cowards carry, the kind that needs numbers and alcohol and a target that cannot fight back. They had spotted him near the market district. One of them threw a bottle. Then they were chasing him, and he was small and fast, but they were adults with long legs and knowledge of the back alleys. They cornered him where 2 buildings met at an angle that created a dead end. Snow covered the ground. Early snow, wet and heavy, muffling sound. The alley was lit by a single paper lantern hanging from a nail above a service door that had been locked for years. The largest man, a carpenter named Daisuke, who told himself every morning that he was a good person, was holding a lid pipe. His breath came in white clouds. His eyes were glazed with sake and the kind of self-righteous fury that men use to disguise their shame. Demon brat, this is our village, our festival. You don't get to walk these streets. Naruto pressed his back against the wall. His orange jumpsuit was torn at the shoulder from where the thrown bottle had caught him. His breath was fast and shallow. His hands were shaking. Please, he said, I just want to go home. The pipe swung. It connected with the left side of his head above the ear. The sound was wet and wrong. Bone flexing under impact, skin splitting, blood running hot and immediate down the side of his face and into the snow. Naruto's body hit the wall and slid down it. His vision went white, and then the fog lifted. The memories came all at once, every single one of them. 38,000 years of existence downloading into a 7-year-old brain that was suddenly, impossibly, large enough to hold it all. The shamans on the plains of Anatolia, the thunder warriors in the tunnels beneath the Himalayan plateau, Lupercal kneeling before him on Thonia, the burning of Monarchia, Horus on the vengeful spirit with madness in his eyes and a mace that could kill a god. The golden throne, the silence, the endless screaming silence of a soul holding shut the gates of hell for 10,000 years while his imperium rotted around him. All of it, every memory, every lesson, every war. Naruto closed his eyes. When they opened, the blue was gone. What replaced it was gold. A luminescent, burning gold that had nothing to do with chakra or biju or any force this world had ever cataloged. The gold of a sun-given consciousness. The gold of absolute authority wearing a human face. The air pressure in the alley dropped like a stone falling off a cliff. The snow stopped mid-fall, every flake suspended in the air like time had forgotten how to work. The paper lantern above the service door went out. The darkness lasted exactly 1 heartbeat. Then the light came, golden, blinding, pouring from the child's body in waves that turned the shadows inside out, that bled through the cracks between buildings and painted the surrounding rooftops in sunrise colors, that made every chakra-sensitive person within a quarter mile feel their stomach drop like they just stepped off a ledge. The carpenter named Daisuke still had the pipe raised for a second swing. His arm would never come down. A voice came out of the boy's throat. It was a 7-year-old's vocal cords producing sound that should have required a chest cavity the size of a cathedral. The frequency of it vibrated in the bones of every person in that alley, a resonance that went past hearing and directly into the nervous system. There are no gods, only man. The telekinetic shockwave detonated. It was gold. It was light. It was force given color and direction and absolute purpose. It radiated outward from the child's body in a perfect sphere, and everything it touched went sideways. Daisuke hit the far wall of the alley so hard the bricks behind him cracked in a spiderweb pattern, and his lungs compressed flat inside his ribs. The woman was slammed into a stack of crates that exploded into splinters beneath her. The other two men were driven into the ground, faces pressed into the snow, the weight of something incomprehensible sitting on their spines and pinning them like insects beneath glass. None of them screamed. They were unconscious before their nervous systems could register what had happened to them. The snow settled. The golden light dimmed to a steady glow around the boy's body. A corona, a halo, a promise of what was living inside that small frame. On a rooftop 40 meters away, a Chunin patrol officer named Izumo Kamizuki had been mid-step between buildings when the light hit him. He was frozen at the edge of the roof, one foot still raised, his mouth open, his hand on the tanto at his hip that he had drawn on pure instinct. His fingers were trembling. He had been a shinobi for 8 years. He had felt killing intent from A-rank missing nin. He had stood in the presence of the third Hokage when the old man let his aura flare during council meetings. None of it, compared to what he had just felt pulse through this alley. His body was telling him to run. His legs were telling him to kneel. His brain was telling him that what he had just witnessed was above his clearance level by about 6 classifications. On a separate rooftop, closer, perched in the shadow of a water tower, an Ambu operative in a cat mask was gripping the edge of the building with both hands. The porcelain of the mask hid the expression, but the body language was readable to anyone trained. Rigid spine, locked shoulders, the particular stillness of someone whose combat instincts are firing every alarm simultaneously while providing 0 useful targets to fight. The Ambu spoke into their communicator. 3 words: alert the Hokage. Inside Naruto's mindscape, the transformation was louder. The sewer corridors, the mental architecture that the seal had created, dripping pipes in ankle-deep water and fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, exploded with golden fire the moment the Emperor woke. The water boiled and turned to steam. The pipes melted and reformed as pillars of white marble. The ceiling rose and rose until it became a vaulted dome of impossible height, painted with murals of conquest and unity that shifted and moved like living things. Behind the great iron gate at the center of the mindscape, Kurama sensed the change immediately. The 9-tailed fox was old. He had been alive since the Sage of 6 Paths split the 10 tails into 9 pieces and gave each one a name. He had seen civilizations rise and crumble to dust. He had been sealed inside Uzumaki hosts for generations. He had felt every shade of human emotion pressed against his cage walls. Fear, hatred, desperation, love, grief, ambition. He had never felt this. The golden light pressing against his cage was something entirely outside his experience. It was psychic in nature. He could feel that much. But it bore 0 resemblance to chakra. Chakra was the combination of physical and spiritual energy, the inheritance of the sage, the native force of this world. What was pressing against Kurama's cage was something from somewhere else entirely. Somewhere vast and ancient and loud, with the accumulated screaming of a reality that operated on different rules. Kurama surged forward. 9 tails whipped behind him, his eyes, red and slitted and older than the hidden villages by millennia, blazed with fury and dominance. He was the 9-tailed fox. He had flattened mountains by swinging his tails. He had survived the Sage of 6 Paths and the first Hokage and every seal ever placed on him. He bowed to nothing. He slammed his chakra against the gate in a wave of malice, so concentrated it should have drowned a human consciousness like a candle in a tsunami. The red chakra flooded outward, corrosive and hungry, seeking the mind of his host to overwhelm and devour. The golden light caught the red chakra at the threshold of the gate and burned it away on contact. Every tendril of malice that crossed the boundary was simply unmade, converted from hostile energy into harmless warmth, and then dissipated into nothing. Kurama's flood of power was meeting a wall of fire and evaporating on contact. Then Naruto appeared before the gate. He was 7 years old. He was bleeding from the temple where the pipe had struck. He was wearing a torn orange jumpsuit and standing in ankle-deep water that was rapidly becoming steam. Except he was also something else entirely. Behind him, above him, around him, overlapping with the child's body like a double-exposure photograph, was the outline of something enormous. Golden armor that stretched to the ceiling of the rebuilt mindscape. A face that was both ancient and ageless, framed by a psychic crown of light that rotated slowly. Eyes that held the accumulated experience of 38,000 years and found everything beneath them insufficient. The Emperor of Mankind looked at the nine-tailed fox through the eyes of a 7-year-old body, and the fox looked back. And for several seconds nothing happened except the sound of golden fire burning against iron bars. Then Naruto raised one hand, a psychic pulse. A single concentrated burst of imperial will, shaped into a battering ram, fired from his palm and hit Kurama in the center of his chest like a mountain dropping from orbit. The fox was massive, a creature whose head alone was the size of a building. The pulse hit him and he went backward, his paws losing purchase on the flooded floor, his body skidding through the mindscape chamber until his spine hit the far wall of his own cage and the wall cracked. Kurama roared. The sound alone should have reduced a human psyche to whimpering wreckage. It hit the golden aura around Naruto and diffused like a wave hitting a cliff face. The Emperor raised his hand again. The telekinetic pressure increased. Kurama's body pressed further into the floor. His legs buckled. His massive frame lowered against his will until his jaw was touching the ground and the weight sitting on his spine was holding him flat like a specimen beneath a magnifying glass. The fox thrashed. His tails whipped and struck the cage walls. His claws dug trenches in the stone floor. Every ounce of his ancient power surged against the invisible force holding him down and found it absolutely immovable. "You are a creature of the warp," the voice said. It came from Naruto's mouth, but it filled the entire mindscape. Every corner, every shadow, every molecule of the reformed air. Born of chaos and raw emotion, you will submit to the imperial truth, or you will be unmade. Kurama's red eyes were very wide. His pupils had contracted to pinpoints. His massive jaw was pressed into the ground, and his breath was coming in labored huffs that sent steam rolling across the floor. This was impossible. This was a child. This was a 7-year-old human boy with a cracked skull and a torn jumpsuit, and he was pinning the nine-tailed fox to the floor of his own cage with one hand raised and zero visible effort on his face. The fury in Kurama's chest was still burning, but beneath it, beneath the rage and the pride and the ancient hatred of being confined, something new was forming. Something that the nine-tailed fox had never experienced in his entire immortal existence: fear. Genuine, bone-deep, soul-level fear. The recognition that the thing looking down at him was above him in the same way that a mountain is above an ant. That fighting it was going to produce exactly one outcome, and that outcome was his complete annihilation. Kurama stopped thrashing. His tails lowered. His claws retracted. His massive head settled onto the ground, and his breath steadied, and his red eyes stared up at the golden figure with an expression that a tailed beast should never wear: submission. The golden pressure eased, slightly, enough to let the fox breathe without strain, enough to communicate that cooperation would be rewarded with reduced discomfort. The Emperor's gaze did not soften. There was no warmth in it, but there was patience. The patience of a being who had tamed far worse things than a chakra construct born from collective human hatred. "Good," Naruto said, and the words settled over Kurama like a collar made of light. "You are a weapon. You will serve a purpose. In time, you may even understand why." Kurama said nothing. His red eyes tracked the golden figure as Naruto turned and walked away from the cage, the mindscape reforming around him. The sewer becoming a throne room, the pipes becoming pillars, the fluorescent lights becoming braziers of golden flame. Inside his cage, alone, the nine-tailed fox lowered his head to his paws and processed the reality that his host was something from outside the system. Something that the Sage of Six Paths had never anticipated. Something that the tailed beasts, all 9 of them, had never been designed to resist. For the first time in a very, very long time, Kurama was afraid of what was going to happen next. The transformation of Naruto Uzumaki over the following months was visible to everyone who had known him before and understood by none of them. The orange jumpsuit disappeared the morning after the awakening. He walked into the single clothing store that would serve him, a small, reluctant shop on the edge of the commercial district, and purchased white linen trousers, a white tunic, and a golden sash. The shopkeeper watched a child who had previously worn neon orange and eaten ramen for every meal lay exact change on the counter with hands that did not shake, then walk out without a word, his posture straighter than a chunin's, his eyes forward and his chin level. The prank stopped. The desperate, screaming hunger for attention that had defined Naruto's first 7 years evaporated like dew under a blowtorch. He had needed acknowledgement because he was a child drowning in loneliness. He was no longer a child. He was an emperor wearing a child's body, and emperors did not beg for the approval of their subjects. The ramen obsession faded. He ate balanced meals, prepared with the efficiency of someone who understood nutrition as fuel for a vessel that needed to grow strong enough to contain what lived inside it. Every morning, Naruto rose before dawn. He left his apartment, which he had cleaned thoroughly, arranged with Spartan efficiency, and sealed with a low-level barrier that made people forget the door was there, and walked to a clearing in the forest 3 miles outside the village walls. He sat cross-legged beneath a massive oak tree and meditated. The meditation was not spiritual in any fuzzy, mystical sense. It was reconstruction. The emperor's memories had arrived as a flood, 38,000 years dumped into a child's brain in a single moment. They needed to be organized, categorized, cross-referenced. Every morning, Naruto sorted through another century of accumulated knowledge, the psychic techniques of the ancient shamans, the gene science of the Primarch Project, the logistics of galaxy-spanning war, the philosophy of the imperial truth, the absolute rejection of religion, the elevation of reason, the insistence that humanity's destiny was conquest and unity under a single will. He looked at the shinobi world through the lens of those memories, and what he saw was familiar. 5 great villages, 5 techno-barbarian kingdoms, each defined by geography and bloodline and tradition, fighting endless wars over territory and ideology, while the greater threats of the world went unaddressed. The Cog system, warlords wearing fancy hats, the clan structure, genetic tribalism, the shinobi ranking system, a hierarchy designed for obedient soldiers rather than thinking warriors. He had seen this before. On Terra, in the age before the Imperium, warring kingdoms and thunder warlords and endless, pointless bloodshed between humans who shared a species and a planet, and should have been united against the real threats lurking in the warp. The real threats here were different in form, but identical in function. The tailed beasts, creatures of the warp by another name, born from the same chaotic emotional energy that spawned daemons in his old universe. Akatsuki, a shadow organization seeking to harness those beasts, led by something ancient and malicious operating from the void. Orochimaru, a man who had abandoned his humanity in pursuit of immortality through biological corruption, a one-man Fabius Bile analog experimenting in the gaps between nations. The shinobi world needed a great crusade. It needed unity by force. It needed one will powerful enough to drag every fractured, tribalist pocket of humanity in this world toward a single purpose. Naruto had done it once across 1 million planets. He could do it again across 5 nations. He began attending the academy the following week. He walked into the classroom with his white tunic and gold sash and his hands clasped behind his back and his gold eyes forward, and the entire room went silent in a way that had nothing to do with the social dynamics of children recognizing a classmate. Every student in that room felt something when he entered. A pressure change, a weight in the air, the instinct of a prey animal recognizing that a predator has entered the clearing and is choosing to ignore them. Iruka Umino, the academy instructor, a kind man with a scar across his nose and genuine love for his students, felt it strongest. He had known Naruto for years, had been one of the few adults in the village who treated the boy with warmth and patience. The child who walked into his classroom that morning was wearing the same face but was fundamentally, irreversibly different. The eyes alone told the story. Blue had become gold, and the gold held something behind it that Iruka's Chunin level senses registered as dangerous without being able to articulate why. Naruto sat in the back row. He said nothing for the entire class. He watched, he assessed, he evaluated every child in that room through the Emperor's eye, a lens that had identified the potential for greatness in humans across 10,000 years of civilization. Most of what he saw was raw material, unformed clay. Children being shaped by a system that would produce competent killers and call them heroes. 3 of them caught his attention. Shino Aburame sat 4 seats from Naruto in the back row, his high collar pulled up to his cheekbones, his sunglasses obscuring his eyes, his body language communicating a single clear message to the world: leave me alone. The other students obliged. Shino was weird. Shino had bugs living inside his body. Shino spoke in compound sentences that made other children's eyes glaze over. Naruto watched him for 3 weeks before making contact. What he saw in those 3 weeks confirmed what the Emperor's eye had identified on the first day. Shino processed information differently than his peers. Where other students reacted emotionally, to insults, to competition, to the social hierarchies forming in the classroom, Shino observed. He collected data through his Kikaichu insects, cross-referenced it against previous observations, and formed conclusions that were remarkably accurate for a child his age. He was a hive mind operator, a biological intelligence network wearing a boy's skin. On a Wednesday afternoon, Naruto found Shino alone in the courtyard during the lunch break. The Aburame boy was sitting on a bench watching his insects crawl across his fingertips in patterns that communicated something only he could read. Naruto sat beside him without invitation. Shino's insects immediately reacted. Dozens of Kikaichu turning toward the new presence, their tiny sensory organs registering something that made them buzz with agitation. "Your insects are confused by me," Naruto said. It was the first words he had spoken to a classmate since his transformation. His voice was even and direct. "They can sense my chakra, but there is something else beneath it that they cannot categorize." Shino turned his covered eyes toward Naruto. His posture was stiff. He was unused to direct address from peers. "They have never encountered a signature like yours," Shino acknowledged after a pause. "It is foreign. Their hive intelligence classifies it as a phenomenon outside their evolutionary programming." "They are correct," Naruto said. He looked at Shino's insects, really looked at them, with the Emperor's eye that had once evaluated gene templates and identified the fundamental qualities of a being's soul. "You think like an emperor." The words landed like a stone dropped from a height. Shino's body went very still. Behind his sunglasses, his eyes, hidden from the world for as long as anyone could remember, blinked twice. "Explain," he said. "Your mind operates as a network," Naruto said. "Every insect is a node. Every piece of data flows through your consciousness and is weighed against every other piece simultaneously. You see patterns that linear thinkers miss because you are processing information in parallel, like a command center, rather than a single soldier. You are dismissed because your power lacks spectacle, but spectacle is the concern of entertainers. Strategy is the concern of rulers." Shino said nothing for a long time. His insects settled back onto his skin, their agitation fading into something closer to curiosity. Behind his collar, the ghost of an expression that might have been the beginning of a smile. They talked for 3 hours. By the end of it, Shino understood 3 things. Naruto Uzumaki was something far beyond what anyone in this village believed him to be. The offer being extended was genuine, and for the first time in his life, someone was looking at his abilities and seeing a weapon of extraordinary value rather than a disgusting curiosity. Choji Akimichi was eating lunch alone at the swing set, the same swing set where Naruto used to sit watching the other children play. The irony was visible. Choji was large for his age, Akimichi body type, built for expansion jutsu, packed with chakra-dense calories that his clan techniques converted into raw physical force. The other students saw fat. They saw a target for jokes. They saw weakness wrapped in soft tissue. Naruto sat beside him on the grass. Choji looked up from his chips with the guarded expression of a child who has learned that when other people approach, mockery usually follows. "That body holds more power than every Uchiha eye in this village combined," Naruto said, looking straight ahead, his voice carrying absolute conviction. "They just lack the vision to see it." Choji's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. a chip balanced between his fingers, forgotten. Nobody had ever said anything like that to him. His father loved him and trained him and told him he was strong. But fathers were supposed to say those things. His teachers encouraged him in the generic way they encouraged all students. His classmates either mocked him or ignored him. The only friend he had was Shikamaru, and Shikamaru expressed affection through proximity rather than words. This boy in white and gold, a boy Choji vaguely remembered as the loud orange troublemaker from last year, was sitting beside him and speaking with a certainty that did not allow for argument, like he was stating a fact as obvious as gravity. "What do you mean?" Choji asked, his voice small and careful. "The Akimichi body is a biological engine," Naruto said, turning to face him. Those gold eyes landed on Choji, and the larger boy felt his spine straighten involuntarily. "Every calorie is fuel. Every pound is convertible force. Your clan techniques transform mass into impact on a scale that makes taijutsu specialists look like children slapping water. The Uchiha see the world and copy it. You reshape it with your bare hands. One of those things is imitation. The other is creation." Choji set the chip bag down. His hands were in his lap. His eyes were very wide and very bright, and there was something building behind them that he was fighting to keep contained. "Nobody thinks that about me," he said. "Everyone who matters will," Naruto replied. "I am building something, Choji. Something that will change this world from its foundations. I need warriors who understand that true strength is generosity of force, the willingness to become immense for the sake of those who are small. You understand that. You have always understood it. You have simply never been told it matters." A single tear cut down Choji's round cheek. He wiped it away fast, embarrassed, looking at the ground. Naruto did not comment on it. He simply sat with Choji in the grass until the lunch bell rang. And when they stood up together and walked back toward the building, Choji's spine was straighter than it had been in years, and his eyes were focused on something ahead of him rather than the ground beneath his feet. Yakumo Kurama was harder to find. She had been removed from the academy years ago, a gifted girl from the Kurama clan whose genjutsu ability was so powerful that it crossed the boundary between illusion and reality. Her paintings came alive. Her visions manifested physically. And inside her subconscious, feeding on the raw psychic power that her mind produced, something else lived. The Id, a manifestation of her repressed anger and grief and loneliness, given form and hunger by the sheer volume of psychic energy flowing through her undeveloped brain. The village had given up on her. Kurenai Yuhi, her former mentor, had sealed the Id away at the cost of sealing Yakumo's powers along with it, leaving the girl a civilian in a clan of genjutsu specialists. A cripple by choice of others. Locked in a house on the outskirts of the Kurama compound, painting canvases that occasionally burned at the edges from residual psychic bleed. Naruto walked to her house on a Thursday evening. He walked past the barrier seals on the property without triggering them. Imperial psychic energy existing on a frequency that shinobi seals were never designed to detect. He walked up to her door and knocked twice. Yakumo opened it and found a boy in white and gold standing on her doorstep, with eyes that glowed faintly in the evening light and an aura that made the air feel thick around him. She should have been afraid. Her hand was shaking. It always shook. The residual tremors from the ID pressing against the seal inside her mind. The constant low-level war between her power and its cage. Her eyes were hollow from months of isolation. Her frame was thin from a body that burned calories fighting an internal battle every single moment of every day. "Who are you?" she asked. "Someone who understands what lives inside a mind that is too powerful for its vessel," Naruto said. He looked at her, past her face, past her eyes, directly into the architecture of her psyche, and the Emperor's sight showed him everything. The seal that Kurenai had placed, the Idid pressing against it, a tumorous mass of psychic energy shaped like rage given teeth. The girl's own power, vast and beautiful, and trapped behind walls that someone else had built. "May I come in?" She let him in, because something in his voice told her that refusing was pointless and agreeing was safe. A contradiction that should have been impossible, but was absolutely true in his presence. They sat across from each other at her small table. Yakumo's paintings lined the walls. Landscapes and faces and abstract whorls of color that rippled faintly when you looked at them too long. The psychic residue in the room was palpable. To a normal person, it would have felt like a mild headache. To Naruto, it felt like home. Raw psychic energy, undirected and wild, but potent beyond what this world usually produced. "The thing inside you is dying to get out," he said. Yakumo's face went pale. "You know about the E, a psychic construct born from your repressed emotions, feeding on your own power, growing stronger every day that the seal contains it, rather than allowing your mind to process and master its own output." He spoke with the certainty of someone who had seen this 1,000 times across 1,000 worlds. Psykers losing control, warp entities forming from unprocessed emotion, the damage done by suppression rather than discipline. "Everyone who has tried to help you has done the same thing," he continued. "They have tried to contain the problem rather than solve it. They sealed your power because they feared what you might become if you mastered it. They chose to make you less rather than teach you to be more." Yakumo's hands were gripping the edge of the table. Her eyes were glistening. The ID behind the seal stirred, sensing the emotional upheaval, pressing forward eagerly. "I can feel it right now," she whispered. "It's always there, pushing, hungry." Naruto stood. He walked around the table and knelt before her so that they were eye to eye. He placed both hands on either side of her head, palms against her temples, fingertips resting in her hair. His hands were warm. The gold in his eyes intensified until they were the brightest thing in the room. "I am going to enter your mind," he said. "I am going to find the thing that is eating you alive, and I am going to burn it out of existence. This will hurt for a moment. Then it will be over. Then your mind will be your own for the first time since you were born." Yakumo stared into those golden eyes and saw something in them that she had never seen in any adult who had ever tried to help her. Complete, total certainty that what he was about to do would work. She nodded. The golden fire flowed from his palms into her temples, and the world went white. Inside Yakumo's mindscape, a fractured gallery of half-finished paintings and broken frames and walls that bled color, the Eye was waiting. It was enormous. A mass of writhing shadow and teeth and half-formed faces, all of them wearing Yakumo's features twisted into expressions of rage and grief and abandonment. It saw the golden light enter its domain and it screamed, a sound that was every painful thing Yakumo had ever felt compressed into a single frequency. The Emperor's light hit the id like a sunrise hitting a vampire. The golden fire did not fight the id. Fighting implies two forces in opposition. The fire simply existed in the same space as the E, and these ceased to exist in every location the fire touched. It was not a battle. It was an erasure. The gold advanced and the shadow receded, and there was nothing the Edi could do about it, because the Adid was a psychic construct born from a child's trauma, and what was burning through it was the accumulated psychic force of a soul that had fought chaos gods across the Imperium for 10 millennia. The E screamed and thrashed and tried to flee deeper into Yakumo's psyche. The golden fire followed it. Everywhere it ran, the light was already there, burning it clean, burning it silent, burning it away piece by piece until the last remnant, a final shrieking face wearing Yakumo's eyes, dissolved into golden sparks and was gone. Yakumo's mindscape went still. The walls stopped bleeding. The broken frames repaired themselves. The half-finished paintings completed. Colors flowing into their proper places, landscapes forming, faces becoming whole. The gallery became beautiful, whole, hers. In the physical world, Yakumo's eyes flew open. Her hands gripped Naruto's wrists. Her mouth was open and tears were streaming down her face, and she was making a sound, a gasping, ragged exhalation that was part sob and part laugh and part something else that had no name. The silence inside her head, the absolute, total silence. The voice that had been whispering in her ear since childhood, the hunger, the rage, the "you are nothing, you are broken, you are wrong," was gone. Her mind was clean and open and vast in hers. "Your mind is your weapon," Naruto said, releasing her temples and standing. "It is whole now. Use it." Yakumo could not speak. She simply sat at her table and wept with a relief so overwhelming that her entire body shook with it. And Naruto stood beside her with his hands clasped behind his back and let her cry until the tears were done. The clearing in the forest. A Tuesday evening, no, a Thursday evening, a week after Yakumo's healing. The four of them gathered in a circle beneath the canopy, Shino standing with his collar up and his insects buzzing in patterns of anticipation around his shoulders. Choji sitting cross-legged, his bag of chips unopened for once, his attention fully forward. Yakumo beside him, her hands still and steady for the first time in years, her eyes clear and bright and focused. And before them, Naruto, standing at the center of the clearing with the last orange light of sunset catching the gold of his sash and the gold of his eyes. He looked at them, these three children that the shinobi world had thrown away. The boy with bugs that everyone found disgusting. The boy whose body everyone mocked. The girl whose mind everyone feared. Discarded by a system that valued flash over substance, spectacle over strategy, bloodline over will. He had done this before. In another life, in another body, on another world. He had looked at his Primarchs and seen in each of them a piece of what humanity could become. These were smaller. These were children rather than genetically engineered demigods. But the principle was the same. You find the ones the world has overlooked. You show them what they really are. And then you watch them become it. You were told you were less, he said. His voice carried across the clearing without effort, each word landing with a weight that made the air feel denser. Every day of your lives in this village, the system around you has communicated that your gifts are insufficient, that the Sharingan is superior to the hive mind, that the flashy taijutsu of the visible clans outranks the body of force, that psychic power unconstrained is a danger rather than a weapon. He looked at each of them in turn. Shino, Choji, Yakumo, I am here to tell you the truth. You are exceptional, and the system that failed to see it will be replaced by one that values what you are. He raised one hand, golden light gathered in his palm, warm, intense, alive with something that felt like purpose given physical form. You shall be my finest warriors, and you shall know no fear. He stepped forward and placed that glowing hand on Shino's shoulder. The golden fire flowed, not as an attack, but as an elevation. It poured into Shino's chakra network and expanded it. His meridians widened, his reserves deepened. His Kikeichu buzzed frantically and then settled as the golden energy integrated with their hive network, giving them a new frequency to communicate on, a faster processing speed, a broader sensory range. Shino's spine straightened and his breath caught, and behind his sunglasses his eyes went very wide. Then Choji, the hand on his shoulder and the fire flowing in, and Choji's body absorbing it like dry earth absorbing rain. His muscles tightened, his bone density increased. His chakra reserves, already large for an Akimichi child, expanded by a factor of 3. The potential energy stored in his body doubled and then tripled, and he felt it like suddenly being aware that you have been carrying a backpack your entire life, and someone just removed it. Lighter and stronger simultaneously. Then Yakumo. The gentlest touch, fingertips on the crown of her head, the golden fire flowing into a mind that was already vast and now became vaster. Her psychic range expanded outward like a radio tower, increasing its broadcast power. The genjutsu that had once threatened to destroy her was still there, but now it was under her command rather than commanding her. A weapon in a holster rather than a bomb in a cradle. The three of them stood in the clearing, glowing faintly with residual golden light, feeling the new depth of their own potential, and looked at the boy who had given it to them. Naruto looked back, and for the first time since the awakening, the first time since the Emperor's soul had fully integrated with the child's body, something that looked like satisfaction passed across his golden eyes. Now, he said, we begin. The academy graduation came and went. Naruto passed without effort, his written exams perfect, his practical examinations executed with a minimum of wasted motion that made Iruka's pen hover over the scoring sheet uncertainly. The Bunshin no Jutsu was replaced with a Kaji Bunshin. 1,000 shadow clones filling the examination room, each one perfect, each one radiating the same golden-eyed pressure as the original. Iruka stared at the army of Narutos and gave him a passing grade because there was nothing else to give. Team placements were announced the following week. Naruto noted his assignment with the detached interest of an emperor, noting which regiment had been attached to his personal guard. Team 7, under Kakashi Hatake, with Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno. Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto had watched him for months. The last loyal Uchiha, a boy wrapped in grief and fury, his entire identity constructed around the murder of his clan and the burning need to avenge it. Every fiber of Sasuke's being was oriented toward a single target, his brother Itachi. Everything else, teammates, village, bonds, philosophy, was secondary, expendable, a means to the end of Itachi's death. Naruto had seen this before. Had seen it in Horus, who let his ambition devour his loyalty. In Angron, whose rage consumed everything he might have been. In Conrad Kurze, whose need for vengeance became his entire identity. The pattern was ancient and predictable, and it always ended the same way. Betrayal. Sasuke would betray Konoha. Given sufficient time and the right offer from the right snake, Sasuke would walk away from everything and everyone in pursuit of power. This was a mathematical certainty in Naruto's assessment. The question was what to do about it. For now, nothing. Let the pattern play. Let Sasuke make his choice. And when the moment came, Naruto would be there, and Sasuke would learn the difference between choosing power and facing it. Sakura Haruno registered on Naruto's awareness as background noise, a bright girl trapped in a shell of adolescent insecurity and misplaced romantic fixation. She was looking at Sasuke with heart eyes and at Naruto with dismissal. And both reactions were irrelevant to his plans. Kakashi Hatake arrived 3 hours late to the rooftop meeting. He appeared in a swirl of leaves with his signature slouch and his visible eye curved in a practiced smile, his orange book tucked into his vest pocket. Yo, my first impression of you guys is... His eye landed on Naruto and the sentence died. The boy was sitting on the railing with perfect posture and his hands in his lap, wearing white and gold, his gold eyes fixed on Kakashi with an intensity that made the Jonin's hand twitch toward his kunai pouch on pure reflex. The pressure radiating from this 12-year-old was wrong. It was too heavy, too old. It sat on Kakashi's shoulders like a physical weight and made the hair on his arms stand up. Kakashi had stood in the presence of the third Hokage. He had served under the fourth. He had fought A-rank criminals and survived the third shinobi war and buried more comrades than he could count. He knew what powerful felt like. This was different. This was something outside the scale he used to measure threat levels. This was a 12-year-old boy looking at him like a general reviewing an enlisted soldier's service record and finding it adequate but unremarkable. You're interesting, Kakashi finished, his smile never wavering, his internal alarm system screaming at a volume he had not experienced since the war. The bell test was scheduled for the following morning. Training Ground 7, dawn. Dew on the grass. 3 wooden posts in the ground. 2 silver bells on Kakashi's belt. Kakashi stood in the center of the field with his hands in his pockets, his posture communicating boredom that was completely performed. He had read Naruto's academy file twice the night before, the old file which described a dead last prankster, and the updated file which described a student who had performed every exam perfectly with a minimum of effort and whose psychological evaluation now contained the phrase fundamental personality shift, recommend further observation, underlined 3 times. Sasuke stood to Kakashi's left, his body coiled, his Sharingan already active, 2 tomoe spinning in each eye, red irises tracking Kakashi's movements with predatory focus. He was itching to prove himself, to demonstrate that the Uchiha bloodline was everything he believed it to be. Sakura stood behind Sasuke, her stance textbook correct, but her muscles tight with nerves, her eyes flicking between Kakashi and Sasuke and Naruto, with the particular uncertainty of someone who knows they are the least dangerous person in the clearing. Naruto stood 30 feet from Kakashi, with his hands clasped behind his back. His white tunic was immaculate. His gold eyes were fixed on the Jonin, the way a man watches a training exercise that has already been scheduled to conclude. The rules are simple, Kakashi said, pulling out the 2 bells. Get a bell from me before noon. Come at me with the intent to kill, or you won't have a chance. Sasuke moved first, a burst of speed that was genuinely impressive for a genin, covering the distance to Kakashi in under 2 seconds, launching a spinning kick aimed at the Jonin's head that transitioned into a low sweep when Kakashi blocked the first strike. His movements were sharp and practiced, and his Sharingan was tracking Kakashi's counters in real time. He was good. For a 12-year-old fighting a jonin, he was exceptional. Kakashi handled him with one hand. A redirect here, a dodge there, maintaining his slouch and his bored expression while Sasuke burned through his entire offensive repertoire. After 90 seconds, Kakashi caught Sasuke's wrist, pivoted, and threw the boy into the tree line. Sasuke hit a trunk and slid to the ground, already rolling to his feet, fury in his red eyes. "Not bad," Kakashi said, "but you're broadcasting every move 2 frames before you make it." Sakura attempted a flanking approach while Kakashi's attention was on Sasuke. She threw kunai, accurate, well-aimed, and then moved in with a punch directed at Kakashi's kidney. Kakashi caught the kunai between his fingers, sidestepped the punch, and placed a hand on Sakura's forehead gently enough to stop her momentum without hurting her. "Teamwork is the point of this exercise," he said, letting her go. "Figure it out." Then he turned to Naruto. The boy had moved. He was standing on the center post now, balanced on top of the wooden pillar like he had been placed there by a sculptor rather than jumped. His hands were still behind his back. His expression had changed. There was something in those gold eyes now. Assessment. The look of someone measuring an obstacle and finding it smaller than the frame it occupied. "Your turn," Kakashi said, pulling out a kunai. His visible eye was narrowed. His body had shifted. Anyone who had trained with Kakashi would have recognized the change. He was taking this seriously now. His weight was on the balls of his feet. His guard was raised. The lazy veneer had cracked and the Ambuka captain underneath was peeking through. "Come at me with the intent to kill," Kakashi repeated. Naruto looked at the kunai, then at Kakashi. "I am the emperor of mankind," he said, and his voice made the air in the clearing feel heavier. "I do not play games with assassins." Kakashi lunged. Full speed, the kind of speed that had dropped multiple elite jonin in his career, that had made him famous in the bingo book, that was legendary among the ranks of Konoha's forces. He crossed the distance in a heartbeat, kunai leading, angle perfect, targeting a non-lethal strike to test the boy's reflexes. Gravity in a 10-foot radius around Naruto doubled. Kakashi's feet dragged into the earth like he was running through wet concrete. His speed halved, then quartered. His legs buckled under the increased weight. His Sharingan, uncovered now, the headband pushed up in the instant before his lunge, spun wildly behind its eyelid, attempting to read what was happening, attempting to find a jutsu signature or a chakra pattern or anything it could copy and counter. There was nothing to read. There were 0 hand signs. There was 0 visible chakra manipulation. There was just a 12-year-old boy standing on a post with his hands behind his back and the fundamental forces of the universe bending around him, like he had asked them politely and they had obeyed. An invisible hand, a telekinetic grip of pure imperial psychic force, closed around Kakashi's throat. It lifted him, 3 feet off the ground, legs dangling, kunai falling from fingers that went slack as the divine pressure sat on his chest like an ocean. Kakashi's Sharingan was spinning at maximum speed and copying nothing because there was nothing to copy. His lungs compressed under the weight. His ribs creaked. His vision started going gray at the edges, and for the first time in years, the first time since the war, Kakashi Hatake felt the genuine, unmistakable sensation of helplessness. The bells telekinetically unclipped from his belt. They drifted through the air, lazy, unhurried, orbiting each other in a slow spiral, and settled into Naruto's open palm, the telekinetic grip released. Kakashi dropped into the dirt. His hands hit the ground first, catching himself, but his arms were shaking. He coughed twice, hard, rattling coughs that spoke to how much pressure his lungs had been under. His headband was tilted sideways. His one visible eye was wide, and his Sharingan was still spinning behind the other, finding nothing, understanding nothing. He looked up at the boy on the post. Naruto set both bells down on the stump beside the post. Then he stepped off the post and landed without a sound, not a blade of grass bending beneath his feet, not a tremor in the earth. "Your test is archaic," he said, turning his back to walk away. "My crusade begins now." The clearing was silent. The morning birds had stopped singing. The dew on the grass around the 3 posts had evaporated in a perfect circle, the residual psychic heat dissipating outward. Sasuke was standing at the edge of the tree line where Kakashi had thrown him. His Sharingan was active. It had been active the entire time. He had watched everything, and his Sharingan, his pride, his birthright, the legacy of the Uchiha that was supposed to see and copy any technique, had shown him nothing, had given him nothing to work with, had sat uselessly in his eye sockets while a boy he had been dismissing as dead last for years lifted their Jonin instructor off the ground with his mind and took the bells without moving his hands. Something in Sasuke's chest cracked. The crack was small, hairline, barely visible even to himself, but it was there. The first fracture in the certainty that the Sharingan made him the strongest person in any room. The first whisper of doubt in the narrative he had built his entire identity around. He said nothing. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Sakura was standing 6 feet behind where Kakashi had been lifted. Her mouth was open. It had been open for approximately 30 seconds. Her brain was attempting to reconcile Naruto Uzumaki, dead last, class clown, ramen addict, with boy who just defeated a legendary Jonin without moving his feet. And the reconciliation was failing spectacularly. Every assumption she had made about the world and the people in it had just been invalidated in under 15 seconds. And the mental architecture required to process that was still under construction. Kakashi got to his feet. He brushed dirt from his vest with hands that were trying very hard to look casual and succeeding only partially. His mind was moving at the speed of a man who has just been presented with information that fundamentally alters his understanding of the world. He had served under the 4th Hokage, a man capable of teleportation, a man whose speed was legendary. The 4th could not have done what this boy just did. The 3rd Hokage, the god of shinobi, the professor, a man who had mastered every jutsu in the Leaf's arsenal, could not have done what this boy just did. Because what this boy just did was outside the system entirely. It operated on principles that the Sharingan could not copy because they were not jutsu. They were not chakra techniques. They were something else, from somewhere else. And Kakashi had just been lifted off the ground by it, like a puppet whose strings were in the hands of a god. He pulled his headband down over his Sharingan. His hand was steady. Years of Anbu training ensuring that his body did what he told it to do, regardless of what his brain was screaming. "Team 7 passes," he said, and his voice was the voice of a man who has just decided that he will be filing a very detailed report and that the Hokage needs to read it immediately. The mission to the Land of Waves came 3 weeks later. Tazuna, a bridge builder, an old man with sake on his breath and desperation in his eyes, hired a team for a C-rank escort mission that was very much not a C-rank mission. His country was dying under the boot of a shipping magnate named Gato, and his bridge was the only hope of breaking the economic stranglehold. He lied on the mission request form because he could not afford the appropriate rank. Naruto knew it was above rank before they left the village. The Emperor's psychic sense extended outward in a constant sphere of awareness, a passive sensory network that registered intent, emotion, and the particular frequencies of souls in distress. Tazuna's soul tasted of desperation and shame and thin, brittle hope. The mission was a trap wrapped in a prayer. Naruto said nothing about it. A trap implies danger. There was nothing dangerous enough in the Land of Waves to constitute a threat to the Emperor of Mankind. There was only opportunity. The first contact came on the road. 2 Chunin-level missing nin from Kiri, hiding inside a puddle on a dry road, their Meizu and Gozu combination attack unspooling the moment Team 7 walked past. Chain weapons lashing out, targeting Kakashi first, wrapping around the Jonin and pulling tight. Kakashi substituted with a log. Standard response. He was testing his Genin's reactions. Sasuke intercepted, pinning the chain to a tree with a shuriken and kunai combination, then kicking one brother in the jaw hard enough to stagger him. Textbook. Effective, the second brother lunged for Tazuna. Poison gauntlet extended. A wall of golden light materialized between the attacking nin and the bridge builder. Solid, radiant, humming with energy that made both brothers' teeth ache. The Chunin hit it at full speed and bounced off like a ball thrown against a cliff face, his arm bending the wrong way at the elbow, his body cartwheeling backward into the dirt. Both brothers looked at Naruto, the source of the wall, and what they saw in those gold eyes made them stop fighting immediately. One of them actually raised his hands in surrender, Operating on an instinct deeper than training, Kakashi landed beside them and placed them in restraints while very pointedly avoiding looking at Naruto for more than 2 seconds at a time. The mission continued to waves. Zabuza Momochi was waiting for them at the lake. The fog rolled in without warning, a thick, absolute blanket of gray-white moisture that killed visibility at arm's length. Hidden Mist Jutsu, Kirigakure no Jutsu, the signature technique of the Hidden Mist Assassination Corps, designed to create a killing field where only the user could navigate. Kakashi's Sharingan uncovered. His body was tense. Zabuza's killing intent flooded the fog, the intent of a man who had once killed an entire graduating class of academy students and earned the title Demon of the Mist through an ocean of blood. Sasuke's hands were shaking. Sakura was frozen. Tazuna was gripping his pack straps with white knuckles. Naruto's eyes glowed like twin stars inside the fog. 2 points of gold burning through the white nothing, visible to everyone, hiding from no one. "You hide in shadows because you fear the light of progress," he said. And his voice did not echo in the fog. It cut through it. He exhaled. The pulse of golden psychic energy radiated outward in a sphere, expanding at the speed of thought, passing through the fog and heating it beyond the point of condensation. The water vapor did not disperse. It boiled. The lake beneath them heated visibly, the surface going from mirror flat to roiling in seconds, steam erupting upward in columns. The fog burned away in a radius of 100 meters centered on Naruto's body, stripped from the air like a curtain torn down from a window. Zabuza was standing 40 feet away on the surface of the lake. His executioner's blade was raised. Kubikira Bocho, the massive head cleaver, a weapon so large it should have been impractical, and in Zabuza's hands was anything but. His lower face was wrapped in bandages. His eyes were narrowed. His body was already in motion, committed to an attack he had launched before his concealment was stripped. He came at full speed. A man who had earned his place in the 7 swordsmen of the mist, whose speed was lethal, whose blade could split stone, whose killing intent alone had paralyzed Jonin. The executioner's blade swept in a horizontal arc aimed at Naruto's neck, enough force behind it to cut through a building foundation. Naruto raised 2 fingers. He caught the flat of the blade between them. The impact registered, the sound of it, the force of it, the sheer physical impossibility of it. A sword that weighed more than most men, swung by one of the strongest shinobi alive, caught between a child's index and middle finger with less effort than pinching a leaf from a branch. Zabuza's eyes went very wide above his bandages. Naruto looked at the blade, looked at the metal between his fingers. Then he closed those 2 fingers together and the sword broke. The fracture started at the point of contact and ran the full length of the blade. A crack like a thunderclap splitting the air, steel screaming as it separated, the massive weapon coming apart in 2 jagged halves that fell on either side of Naruto and embedded them in the lake's surface. The sound of it rolled across the water like thunder. Zabuza was left holding a hilt and 6 inches of shattered steel. His hands that had never trembled once in his career, were vibrating with the aftershock. His eyes above the bandages were showing something that Zabuza Momochi had not felt since he was a child standing in a classroom full of corpses. Recognition of something superior. From the trees at the shore, a masked figure was watching. Haku, Zabuza's tool, his weapon, the boy who called himself nothing more than an implement of his master's will. Haku's hands were at his sides, and his senbon were holstered, and his body behind the porcelain mask was absolutely still. His brain was processing what his eyes had just shown him with the efficiency of a combat-trained mind, and arriving at a conclusion that made his stomach drop. The person who had just broken Zabuza's sword was 12 years old and had not elevated his heart rate. Kakashi was standing behind Naruto with his Sharingan exposed and his mouth hidden behind his mask, and his brain filing away data at a speed that his normal processing could barely maintain. Every encounter with this boy added another impossible data point to a file that was rapidly approaching the classification of existential threat to the current understanding of what a shinobi is. The confrontation ended without further combat. Zabuza retreated, not in defeat, because his pride would not allow that framing, but in reassessment. He took Haku and vanished into the trees and the fog that remained beyond Naruto's radius of influence, and the silence he left behind was the particular silence of a battlefield, where one side has realized they brought the wrong weapons. The bridge, Tazuna's great project, a span of concrete and steel that would connect the land of waves to the mainland, that would break Gato's shipping monopoly, that would give a dying nation a lifeline. Half finished, its skeleton stretching out over the gray water like a reaching hand. The final confrontation played out in stages. Zabuza came again, because Zabuza was a man who did not accept the evidence of his own defeat. He came with Haku this time, the masked boy's ice release creating a prison of mirrors on the bridge surface, demonic mirroring ice crystals, a dome of reflective ice that trapped Sasuke inside and pelted him with Senbon from every angle simultaneously. Sasuke activated his Sharingan, tracked the Senbon, dodged most, took others in non-vital points, fought back with fire release great fireball technique, a blazing sphere of flame that hit the ice mirrors and achieved nothing because Haku's ice was chakra dense beyond what fire of that level could melt. Naruto watched this for 11 seconds. Then he raised one hand toward the ice dome and released a pulse of golden psychic fire, a wave of heat and light and raw imperial force that hit the ice mirrors and did not melt them. It unmade them. The ice did not transition through liquid to gas. It simply stopped existing in the space where the golden fire passed through. The dome collapsed, every mirror winking out of existence simultaneously. And Haku was left standing in the center of where his technique had been. His mask cracked from the psychic pressure, his body frozen in the position he'd been in when his jutsu disappeared around him. He looked at Naruto. Behind the cracked mask, Haku's eyes held something that was not fear. It was awe mixed with understanding. The understanding of a weapon recognizing a superior force. The understanding of someone who serves a master and has just encountered something worth serving on a completely different scale. Zabuza, fighting Kakashi 40 meters away, felt his ice dome disappear and turned his head. In that moment of distraction, Kakashi's hand crackled with lightning, Raikiri, the lightning blade, and drove forward. "Enough," Naruto said. His voice was the only thing in the world for exactly 1 second. Kakashi's Raikiri stopped 6 inches from Zabuza's chest, stopped by a telekinetic wall of golden force that shimmered in the air between them. "The fight is over," Naruto continued. "The real enemy is approaching." As if summoned by his words, and perhaps they were, the sound of a crowd reached the bridge. From the incomplete far end came Gato, flanked by 200 mercenaries, swords and clubs and crossbows bristling from the mob like quills from a porcupine. The shipping magnate himself was a small man in an expensive suit, his cane tapping the concrete as he walked, his face split in a grin of absolute confidence. "Looks like the demon of the mist got his ass handed to him." Gato laughed, looking at Zabuza. "Doesn't matter. I was going to kill you anyway. Too expensive." He looked at the mercenary army behind him. 200 armed men against a handful of exhausted shinobi and a bridge builder. The math was simple. The math was in his favor. Naruto rose into the air. There were no hand signs. There was no visible chakra. He simply lifted off the bridge surface and ascended. 10 feet, 15, 20. Until he was suspended above the center of the bridge with the gray sky behind him and his white tunic catching the mist-filtered light. His gold eyes looked down at the mercenaries and at the small, cruel man leading them, and there was nothing in his expression. No anger, no excitement, no effort. "The universe has many horrors," he said, and his voice carried across the entire bridge without being raised, reaching every ear simultaneously like it was being spoken directly into each skull. "Yet you are the greatest of them, parasites feeding on the weak." Gato's grin faltered. Some instinct, the rodent brain that had kept him alive through decades of criminal enterprise, was telling him that something had changed. That the math he was relying on was wrong. Naruto raised one hand. Golden fire fell from the sky. It came in beams, dozens of them, thin as fingers and hot as the core of a star, each one targeted with a precision that was beyond human calculation. They fell on the mercenaries, every single one simultaneously. 200 points of golden light descending from the gray sky like the finger of judgment itself. The mercenaries did not burn. Burning implies time. Burning implies a process. What happened to them happened in a single frame of reality. They were there, and then they were light, and then they were ash, and then the ash was gone. 200 armed men reduced to memory in under a second. The sound of it was a single collective hiss, like a candle being snuffed. And then the bridge was empty where the army had stood. Gato had exactly 2 seconds. 2 seconds to stare at the empty space where his army had been. 2 seconds to look up at the golden-eyed boy floating above him. 2 seconds to understand that every protection he had ever purchased, every wall of money and violence he had built around himself, meant absolutely nothing. The golden fire found him. He was ash before the scream in his throat reached his lips. The bridge was silent. Naruto descended and landed on the concrete without a sound. His white tunic remained spotless. His hands returned to their position clasped behind his back. His breathing was the same rhythm it had been when he woke up that morning. Zabuza was on his knees. He had not decided to kneel. His body had done it autonomously, legs folding, knees hitting concrete, hands releasing the broken hilt of his destroyed sword and hanging at his sides. Every combat instinct in his body, every reflex honed through decades of bloodshed and survival, had arrived at the same conclusion simultaneously. This is a sovereign. You do not stand in the presence of a sovereign. Beside him, Haku was kneeling as well. The cracked mask had fallen from his face, revealing soft features and eyes that were streaming tears that the boy did not seem aware of. Something inside him, the part of him that had always been a weapon looking for a hand to wield it, had found what it was looking for, and the relief of it was overflowing through his eyes without permission. Kakashi was standing 5 feet away with his Raikiri long since dismissed, his hands at his sides, his Sharingan exposed and spinning slowly. He was looking at Naruto with the expression of a man who has been gradually updating his understanding of the world for weeks and has just arrived at a conclusion that rewrites everything. The old man, Tazuna, was gripping the bridge railing so hard his knuckles had gone white. His mouth was hanging open. His flask was lying on the ground at his feet where he had dropped it. His eyes were fixed on the boy in white and gold who had just erased 200 men from existence and landed as gently as a falling leaf. From the village side of the bridge, the people of Waves were gathering. They had come to help. Pitchforks and courage and the desperate bravery of an oppressed people who had finally decided to fight back. They had arrived to find no fight remaining. Only a boy standing on an empty bridge over gray water, 2 kneeling warriors at his feet, and the sudden, absolute absence of the man who had been crushing their nation for years. "This land is the first territory of the Imperium," Naruto said. His voice carried to the gathered villagers, to Zabuza and Haku at his feet, to his team behind him, to the sky above and the water below and the bridge itself, this monument to hope that a dying nation had built with bleeding hands. He looked at Zabuza, then at Haku. "Rise! You are my custodes now." Zabuza stood. His spine was straight in a way it had not been since he was a young swordsman full of ideals that the bloody mist had beaten out of him. Haku stood beside him, tears still wet on his face, his eyes fixed on Naruto with the kind of devotion that is born when someone who has been a tool their entire life is finally told they can be something more. The people of Waves were watching. Some of them were kneeling as well, not because anyone told them to, but because something in the scene before them communicated a truth that their bodies understood before their minds. A 12-year-old boy had just freed their nation, had just erased their oppressor from existence, had just claimed their land as his first territory, and somehow, impossibly irrationally, against every logical assessment of what was appropriate, it felt right. They returned to Konoha, and the world had shifted slightly on its axis. Reports filed by Kakashi Hatake entered the Hokage's office and were read by the third with a pipe clenched between his teeth and an expression of growing, complicated concern on his aged face. Anbu deployed to the land of Waves confirmed Gato was gone. His organization was dissolved. The bridge was complete. The nation was functioning. And when asked who had liberated them, the people of Waves said the same name with the same tone of voice, reverent and absolute, that made the intelligence operatives filing the reports exchange glances that communicated shared unease. Sasuke returned to the village, carrying the memory of the bridge fight like a splinter under his skin. His Sharingan, 3 Tomoe now, fully matured in the stress of Haku's ice mirrors, had recorded everything Naruto did and offered him nothing useful. He could replay the golden fire in his mind's eye. He could see the telekinetic waves and the hovering and the absolute dismantling of 200 men. He could see all of it and copy none of it. And the frustration of that was a slow-burning acid in his chest that ate at him every hour he was awake. The gap between them was not something he could close through training. That was the part that was destroying him. It was not a skill difference or a technique gap or an experience deficit. It was a category difference. They were playing different games, and Sasuke's game, the Sharingan, the Uchiha legacy, the revenge against Itachi, was starting to feel very, very small. The Chunin exams arrived, and Konoha filled with foreign shinobi, teams from every major village flooding the streets. Sand, sound, waterfall, rain, grass. The village buzzed with competitive energy and the particular tension of hosting a tournament that doubled as a political showcase. Naruto moved through the exam's first stage, the written test, without lifting his pencil. Ibiki Morino's intimidation tactics registered as interesting from a psychological warfare perspective and nothing else. Naruto answered every question through direct psychic scan of the answer sheet on Ibiki's desk, his gold eyes never leaving the wall in front of him, his paper completed in 4 minutes. The second stage, the Forest of Death. 44 gates, teams of 3 carrying scrolls, 5 days to reach the tower. A jungle filled with oversized predators and enemy shinobi. Naruto's team entered at gate 12. Sasuke was tense and eager. The Chunin exams represented advancement, represented power growth, represented one step closer to Itachi. Sakura was nervous but competent. The weeks since the wave mission had changed her, stripped some of the fangirl veneer away, and replaced it with a sharper awareness of who she was working alongside. They had their scroll within 6 hours. A rain team made the mistake of ambushing Team 7 and discovered very rapidly that the golden-eyed boy at the front was capable of rendering all 3 of them unconscious with a single psychic pulse that did not require him to stop walking. Naruto plucked the scroll from the lead Rain-Nin's belt pouch without breaking stride. Then the presence hit. Naruto stopped mid-step. His gold eyes went narrow. His head turned slowly toward the northwest quadrant of the forest, where something was moving through the trees that should have been impossible. It felt like rot wearing a human shape, like a soul that had been folded and refolded so many times that the creases had become tears, like biology twisted into configurations that spat in the face of natural law, like the warp, like chaos, wearing a shinobi's mask, Orochimaru. "Stay behind me," Naruto said. His voice carried a tone that Sasuke and Sakura had learned not to argue with. The tone that meant something was about to happen, and their role was to be alive after it. The snake Sanin dropped from the trees like a nightmare, taking physical form. His face was wrong, stretched, pale, his tongue extending from his mouth like a separate creature. His yellow eyes slitted and ancient and burning with an intelligence that had outlived its own humanity decades ago. His killing intent flooded the clearing, a wave of murderous promise so thick and tangible that it felt like drowning in cold water. Sasuke's legs locked. His Sharingan was active, and every Tomoe was spinning, and his body refused to move because every nerve ending was reporting the same message. "You are going to die here." Sakura's mouth opened in a silent scream that never came. Her eyes were locked on Orochimaru, and her body was running a calculation that had only one answer: run, 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 run. Naruto stood between them and the Sanin. He looked at Orochimaru the way someone looks at something that crawled from underneath a stone and left a trail of slime behind it. Abomination. The word fell into the clearing like a blade dropping from a height. The temperature dropped 5 degrees in an instant. The killing intent that Orochimaru was radiating hit Naruto's golden aura and dissolved, absorbed, nullified, rendered meaningless by a presence so vast that Orochimaru's malice was background noise. Orochimaru's tongue retracted. His yellow eyes focused on Naruto with sudden, sharp interest, the interest of a scientist encountering an anomaly. "Interesting," the Sanin whispered. "Naruto-kun, you've changed since I last checked the Academy records. That power, it's exquisite. I wonder what I could learn from. He didn't finish. A giant snake exploded from the earth, summoned from a bite on Orochimaru's thumb. A creature the size of a building, its scales the color of dead forests, its jaws opening wide enough to swallow a house. It crashed through the trees, flattening everything in its path, aimed at Team 7 like a living battering ram. The Emperor's blade materialized in Naruto's right hand. It was not a physical sword. It was psychic fire given form, golden flame condensed into an edge that burned without fuel, that existed as pure imperial will shaped into something that could cut. It hummed with a frequency that made the air vibrate and the trees nearest to Naruto lean away like they were repelled. One sweep, a single horizontal slash from right to left, the golden blade extending its reach beyond the physical dimensions of the sword. A crescent wave of golden fire that traveled outward from the arc and kept going. It hit the giant snake and passed through it without resistance. It hit the trees behind the snake and passed through them. It hit the forest beyond those trees and passed through that as well. For a full mile in the direction of the swing, the world was cut in two. The giant snake fell in halves, the cut so perfect that both sections separated and dropped without spilling blood for a full second before gravity caught up. Trees behind it tilted and slid apart along surgical cuts that ran their full height. The earth itself had a groove in it, a line carved into the forest floor that stretched to the limit of vision. The silence after was the kind of silence that follows something too large for the brain to immediately process. Orochimaru was still standing. He had dodged, moved at the last millisecond with a speed that only a Sannin possessed. His body twisting like a serpent, the golden fire passing close enough to his left arm that his sleeve caught. The golden fire touched his arm. It did not burn the flesh first. It went deeper, past skin, past muscle, past bone, down to the chakra pathways that threaded through the limb, down further to the soul fragments that Orochimaru had scattered across dozens of bodies and cursed seals. The fire found the connection between Orochimaru's will and his arm, and it severed that connection on a fundamental level. The arm seized. Every muscle locked simultaneously. The chakra pathways collapsed, not closed, not blocked, but erased. The nerves fired a final cascade of signals and then went silent forever. The arm dropped to Orochimaru's side like a dead thing, still attached, still visible, but functionally gone. A limb cut off from the soul that was supposed to operate it. Orochimaru made a sound. It was barely a sound, a quick strangled intake of breath that was half gasp and half something that might have been a whimper if it had come from anyone else. His yellow eyes went wide in a way they had not gone in 50 years. His remaining hand gripped his dead arm and squeezed and found nothing. No sensation, no chakra response, nothing. He had been alive for decades. He had conquered death. He had transferred his consciousness between bodies. He had survived fights with Kaji-level opponents and walked away to scheme another day. He had never, in all those years and all those bodies, encountered a force that his immortality could not heal. The golden fire on the wound was still burning, faintly, a residual glow that pulsed with something that felt like divine judgment. And Orochimaru's regeneration, his greatest asset, his ultimate survival tool, was flowing toward the arm and hitting the golden residue and turning to ash on contact. This was permanent. Reason and logic shall prevail, Naruto said, walking forward, the Emperor's blade still blazing in his hand, his golden aura melting the bark off surrounding trees in a radius that expanded with each step. Your chaotic existence ends here. Orochimaru shed his skin. It was a body replacement on a level that only a Sannin could perform. His entire physical form ejecting a new body from his throat like a snake shedding, the old husk collapsing behind him, the new body already in motion, already burrowing into the earth with both legs driving downward. He did not look back. He did not calculate an escape route. He simply ran, a legendary Sannin, a man who had fought the third Hokage and lived, a man who had terrorized nations and established hidden villages of his own creation, running from a 12-year-old genin in the forest of death with genuine terror driving every muscle. The clearing was silent after he was gone. The smoking ruins of the bisected forest stretched to the horizon. The two halves of the giant snake were dissolving into smoke. The residual golden energy crackled in the air like static, Sasuke was staring. His Sharingan was recording everything. The bisected forest, the dead arm, the retreat of a Sannin, the boy in white and gold standing in the destruction with a burning sword and an expression of mild disappointment that his target had escaped. Every single thing Sasuke had believed about power, about the Sharingan being the pinnacle, about Uchiha blood being the key to strength, about revenge against Itachi being achievable through his bloodline alone, crumbled in his chest like wet paper. The boy he had been dismissing for months had just sent a Sannin running with one arm dead and genuine fear on his face. Sasuke's brother, the target of his entire existence, the strongest person in his personal universe, would have had to fight Orochimaru seriously, would have had to use Susanoo or Amaterasu or his full Mangekyo arsenal to achieve what Naruto had achieved with a single swing of a sword that was made from his mind. The gap was not a gap, it was a canyon. It was an ocean. It was the difference between a candle and a star. Sasuke said nothing. His Sharingan deactivated. His hands were shaking at his sides. Sakura was sitting on the ground. She had sat down at some point during the confrontation, her legs giving out beneath her, and was looking at Naruto's back with an expression that had moved entirely past crush or infatuation and arrived at something deeper and less comfortable. Something like the recognition that she was standing in the presence of something that history would remember, and she was a footnote in the story. The Chunin exam finals were interrupted by war. The signal went up during the Kage box confrontation, the genjutsu falling over the stadium like a blanket, white feathers drifting, civilians and genin dropping into sleep, while the shinobi who recognized the technique broke free and found a village under siege. Sand and sound forces pouring over the walls, Anbu engaging on rooftops, the third Hokage trapped inside a barrier with Orochimaru on the stadium roof, and on the outskirts, beyond the forest, beyond the walls, a roar that shook the foundations of the village. Gaara of the Sand had lost control. The one-tailed Shukaku materialized beyond the tree line, a towering construct of sand and wind chakra, its massive jaw hanging open, its single eye rolling with the madness of a beast that had been caged too long. Its tail swung and acres of forest went flat. Its roar alone shattered windows inside the village. Gaara was gone, consumed by the beast that had whispered to him since birth, his consciousness drowning in a sea of sand and bloodlust that had no bottom. The boy, already broken, already driven half insane by a lifetime of isolation and murder, and the voice in his head that never stopped telling him to kill, had finally let go. Naruto was already moving. He left the stadium through the wall, not through a door or a window, but through the wall itself, his body passing through solid stone as though the stone was not there, the molecules parting around his psychic aura and reforming behind him without a mark. He crossed the village at a speed that made the Anbu on the rooftops turn their heads too late, catching only a blur of white and gold and a trailing wake of golden light. He landed in the forest before Shukaku. Standing on the ruined earth where the demon's tail had flattened trees, looking up at the sand construct with the same expression he wore for everything, patient, absolute, vast. The golden light erupted. It shot from his body straight up, a column of pure psychic radiance that punched through the canopy and through the clouds and kept going, visible from inside the village walls, visible from the Hokage monument, visible from every rooftop where every shinobi fighting the invasion stopped for 1 second and looked toward the forest and felt their hearts stutter. The golden avatar materialized around him. It built itself from the psychic energy pouring upward, taking shape layer by layer, golden armor forming from light, pauldrons and greaves, and gauntlets locking into place, a face that was Naruto's, and simultaneously something ancient and terrible behind a visor of burning gold. The avatar grew until it matched Shukaku's height, a towering figure of imperial light standing opposite the sand demon, the ground between them cracking from the competing auras. Shukaku fired. Wind release, drilling air bullet, a sphere of compressed wind, large enough to destroy a city block, screaming through the air at a speed that left a vacuum trail behind it. The attack that had leveled fortifications in the last war. The attack that had killed Kage-level shinobi who failed to dodge it. The golden avatar raised one hand. The air bullet hit the palm and stopped. The wind howled against golden fingers that did not flex. The avatar closed its fist. The jutsu, all that compressed force, all that destructive wind, diffused between the avatar's fingers like smoke squeezed through a grate. Harmless breeze drifted away. Then the avatar moved. It crossed the distance between them in 2 steps, each footfall sending a tremor through the earth that registered on seismographs in Konoha. Its hands reached out, both of them, massive golden constructs of pure will, and closed around Shukaku's throat. The sand demon thrashed. Its tails whipped. Its claws raked the avatar's chest plate and achieved nothing, scratching light, scratching divinity, scratching 10,000 years of accumulated power. The avatar drove Shukaku into the earth. The impact was biblical in scale. No, it was beyond any word this world had. The shockwave traveled through the ground like a wave through water, reaching the village walls and making the stone vibrate, making buildings sway, making ninja on rooftops stumble and grab for purchase. A crater formed beneath the pinned demon, the earth giving way under the combined weight of the sand construct and the psychic force driving it down. Trees for a quarter mile in every direction were pushed flat by the displaced air. Shukaku was pinned, its massive body pressed into the earth, the avatar's hands on its throat, its tails thrashing uselessly against the golden arms that held it. It roared, a sound of rage and frustration, and something that was beginning to edge toward the same thing Kurama had felt. The same recognition. Naruto sent his mind into the beast, past the sand, past the chakra, past the demon, down into the place where Gaara was drowning. He found the boy curled in the center of a hurricane, a storm of sand and blood and memory, whirling around a child who had given up fighting it. Gaara was crouched with his arms over his head, his eyes wide and red and seeing nothing. Around him, the fragments of his life played on loop. His uncle's betrayal, the words "nobody has ever loved you," the sandbox where children ran screaming from him, the blood on his hands that never washed away no matter how many times he scrubbed. Naruto walked through the hurricane. The sand parted around him. The blood evaporated when it touched his aura. The memories went silent where his light fell. He walked until he was standing directly in front of Gaara's curled form, and then he knelt. Gaara. The boy flinched. His red eyes looked up through the gap between his arms. Wild. Destroyed. The eyes of someone who stopped expecting kindness so long ago that the absence of cruelty was enough to confuse him. Naruto placed one glowing hand on the top of Gaara's head. The touch was gentle. The golden fire that flowed from it was warm and did not burn. "The warp claims the broken," Naruto said. "My light protects." The golden fire entered Gaara's seal. It did not suppress Shukaku. Suppression was what had been done to Gaara his entire life, pressing the problem down rather than resolving it. The fire burned something else instead. The madness. The voice of the demon that had been whispering, "Kill, kill, kill," since Gaara was an infant. The calcified hatred that had built up around the seal over years of misuse and neglect. The corruption that made Gaara unable to sleep, unable to trust, unable to exist without violence. It burned away piece by piece, layer by layer. Year by year of accumulated damage rendered into golden ash and carried away. Gaara's breath came faster as each layer burned, gasping, ragged, and then slower as the weight lifted. His shoulders dropped, his arms lowered from his face. His eyes went from red to their natural pale green, a color he had not seen in his own reflection for years. The hurricane stopped. The sand settled. The blood was gone. The memories dimmed to distant things rather than present horrors. For the first time in Gaara of the Sand's entire life, his mind was silent. He opened his eyes fully, looked at Naruto, and the tears came. They cut through the sand, dried on his face. Clean tracks through grit and blood, falling without sound, falling without shame. A boy who had never been allowed to cry was crying for the first time, and it felt like exhaling after holding your breath for 12 years. Naruto did not move his hand from Gaara's head. He let the boy cry. He held the golden fire steady and warm against Gaara's mind until the tears slowed and the breathing evened, and the silence inside became something bearable rather than something terrifying. "You are free of the voice," Naruto said. "What you do with the silence is your choice, but you have a choice now, for the first time. Hold on to that." Gaara's hand, small, shaking, a killer's hand, that had never been offered a different purpose, reached up and gripped Naruto's wrist. The grip was tight, desperate, the grip of someone holding on to the first rope thrown to them in a lifetime of drowning. In the physical world, the Shukaku avatar collapsed. The sand lost cohesion all at once, the structure falling apart into a billion grains that cascaded outward in a wave and settled across the destroyed forest like tan snow. The golden avatar above dissipated, the golden light dimming, the armor dissolving into motes of energy that drifted upward and faded. Naruto stood in the center of the crater. Gaara was lying before him, unconscious, his face peaceful for the first time in his life, his breathing even and his body limp with the particular exhaustion of someone who has just been freed from a decade of sustained torture. On the rim of the crater, Sand Village shinobi were gathered. Temari with her fan raised and her face pale. Kankuro with his puppets deployed and his hands frozen on the strings. There Jonin Sensei with a kunai drawn and his entire body locked in a stance that did not know whether to attack or kneel. They had watched their weapon, their village's ultimate deterrent, the living bomb they were supposed to deploy against Konoha, defeated and quieted by a single child. They had watched the strongest being in their arsenal get driven into the earth and pinned like an insect on a board. One by one, they lowered their weapons, not because anyone told them to, because there was nothing else to do. The war was over. Their weapon was neutralized. Their invasion had lost its cornerstone, and the boy standing in the crater below them was radiating a presence that communicated a simple truth without words. Resist, and what happened to the demon will happen to you. Submit, and something better than what you had before might be offered. The sand forces across the village received the signal and stood down. The invasion collapsed without its central pillar. Sound forces, already disorganized without Orochimaru's direct presence, scattered and fled. By evening, the siege was over and Konoha was standing, and the only major casualty was the third Hokage, who had died inside the barrier seal on the stadium roof, sealing Orochimaru's arms with the Reaper death seal. The old man had done his duty in the end. Naruto felt the third's passing as a distant flicker, a candle going out in a room far away. He had respected the old man, had appreciated the small kindnesses offered during his childhood. But the emperor did not grieve for soldiers who died fulfilling their purpose. The third had protected the village one final time. That was enough. 3 weeks after the invasion, Jiraiya of the Sannin arrived at Naruto's apartment. The Toad Sage was a large man, tall, broad, white-haired, wearing his personality like a coat designed to make people underestimate him. Behind the pervert persona and the loud laughter was one of the most dangerous and well-connected intelligence operatives in the shinobi world. His spy network spanned all 5 nations. His combat record included stalemates with S-rank opponents and a confirmed draw with Hanzo the Salamander. He found Naruto meditating in the center of his apartment, white and gold eyes opening as the window slid open and the large Sannin landed inside uninvited. "Yo, kid," Jiraiya said, his tone deliberately casual. "I'm your new teacher. Figured we'd go on a trip. Find Tsunade. Get her back to the village to be Hokage. Sound good?" Naruto looked at Jiraiya for 3 seconds without speaking, reading him, evaluating. Jiraiya felt the weight of that stare and his casual smile became slightly less casual. "You are Jiraiya of the Sannin," Naruto said. "Student of the 3rd, teacher of the 4th. My father's sensei." Jiraiya blinked. "You know about. I am the vessel of a being with 38,000 years of accumulated knowledge. Determining my parentage required approximately 4 seconds of observation after my awakening. The resemblance to the 4th Hokage is obvious to anyone who looks." Jiraiya's casual mask cracked slightly. He studied the boy, really studied him, with the eyes of a sage who had trained under toads and learned to read natural energy. What he felt made the hair on his arms stand. "Right," Jiraiya said after a pause. "So you're the real deal. The reports don't even come close, do they?" "They do not." "Well," Jiraiya crossed his arms. "Trip still stands. I can't teach you much apparently, but I can introduce you to people who need meeting. Tsunade's one of them. The world out there needs to see what's coming." Naruto stood. He straightened his tunic. His hands went behind his back. Acceptable. The road between Konoha and the town where Tsunade had been last spotted was 3 days of walking for normal people. Naruto covered it in 2, his pace set by choice rather than limitation, Jiraiya matching him with the ease of a man who had walked every road in every nation multiple times. They talked sparingly. Jiraiya asked questions about the Emperor, about the memories, about the golden fire and the psychic abilities and the plan that was forming behind those gold eyes. Naruto answered what served his purpose and deflected the rest with silence. Jiraiya, to his credit, did not push. He was an intelligence operative. He knew when information was being rationed, and he respected the hand doing the rationing. On the evening of the second day, they stopped at an inn. The attack came without warning. 1 second, the hallway outside their room was empty. The next, 2 figures stood in it, having appeared without sound, without chakra flare, without any detectable sign of movement. Just 2 men in black cloaks with red clouds, standing with the particular stillness of predators who have already decided the outcome of the encounter. Itachi Uchiha, Kisame Hoshigaki, Jiraiya tensed behind Naruto, his body coiling, natural energy beginning to gather, toad oil and flame and decades of combat experience spinning up to readiness. Itachi's Sharingan was already active, 3 Tomoe in each eye, red as arterial blood, the Mangekyou pattern shifting beneath the surface like something waiting to be released. He looked at Naruto with an expression that was perfectly blank, the mask of a man who had worn his emotions sealed behind his face for so many years that it was unclear if he could still remove it. Naruto Uzumaki, Itachi said. His voice was even and soft. We have been sent to acquire you. I am aware of Akatsuki's intentions, Naruto replied. He was standing with his hands behind his back. His posture had shifted slightly, feet planted, weight centered. The temperature in the hallway was dropping as his aura expanded outward, filling the space with golden pressure. Kasame grinned behind Itachi, sharp teeth exposed, his massive frame leaning on Samahata, the living sword wrapped in its bandages, squirming eagerly as it sensed the enormous energy radiating from the boy before them. This one's got juice, Kasame rumbled. Samahata's going crazy. Let me. Itachi moved, no warning, no transition between stillness and motion. His Mangekyou blazed to life and the Tsukuyomi activated. Then Jutsu's initiation requiring only eye contact, the technique that imprisoned victims in a mental realm where Itachi controlled time, space, and pain. 72 hours of torture compressed into a single second of real time. The technique that had broken Kakashi Hatake. The technique that had never been resisted. The world went red. Naruto was standing inside the Tsukuyomi. The blood-red sky stretched above him. Black crosses erupted from the ground in every direction. Thousands of them, an army of suffering reaching to the horizon. Itachi stood before him in his Akatsuki cloak, katana drawn, his Mangekyou spinning with absolute authority over this mental prison. You will suffer here for 72 hours, Naruto. The crosses exploded, not the way Itachi intended, not outward with blades and fire and instruments of pain. They exploded inward, collapsing toward a central point, drawn by a gravity that was not Itachi's. The red sky above bleached to white in a single frame, a flash of absolute luminosity that burned away the blood-red overlay like tissue paper in a furnace. The black crosses were gone. The horizon was gone. The mental architecture of the Tsukuyomi, all of it, every wall and weapon and clock that Itachi controlled, dissolved into nothing under a pressure that was simply, absolutely, completely beyond the scope of what the technique was designed to contain. Naruto's voice filled the void that remained. It came from everywhere simultaneously, above, below, inside, outside. A voice that carried the weight of a mind containing 38,000 years of psychic warfare experience. Your mind is a puddle attempting to drown an ocean. The Tsukuyomi shattered dot, not ended, not released. Shattered, broken from the inside out by a force that treated Itachi's ultimate technique the way a boot treats a glass figurine. Itachi was ejected from his own genjutsu with a violence that had physical consequences. In the real world, both of Itachi's eyes burst blood simultaneously. Crimson tears streaked down his cheeks. He hit the wall of the inn hallway and slid down it, his hands flying to his face, his Mangekyou spinning wildly and finding nothing. No purchase, no control, no input. His composure broke. The mask cracked. Pain, real, genuine, unfamiliar pain, crossed his face in a way that no one had seen since the night of the Uchiha massacre. Kasame's grin disappeared. He moved on reflex. Samahata swinging off his shoulder, the bandages unwrapping, the living sword's scales bristling with hunger as it surged toward Naruto. Samahata, the sword that ate chakra, that had drained Kage-level opponents, that had ended fights by simply touching its target and feeding. Naruto turned his head toward Kasame. A telekinetic wall, invisible, dense, absolute, fired forward from Naruto's position like a battering ram. It hit Kasame in the center of his chest. Samahata flew from his grip. His feet left the ground. He traveled backward through the end wall, through the plaster and the studs and the exterior wall behind it, and into the street beyond. His ribs compressed on impact. He hit the dirt road 40 feet from the end and skidded another 20 before stopping. A trench carved into the earth by his body. He did not get up quickly. The end hallway was silent. Itachi was on the floor, leaning against the wall, blood streaming from both eyes, his breath coming in ragged gasps that he was trying to control and failing. His hands were shaking. His Manjikyu was still active, but achieving nothing, spinning in empty space, firing signals into a void that offered no response. Naruto stood in the center of the hallway. His hands were still clasped behind his back. His breathing was unchanged. His white tunic was spotless. His gold eyes looked down at Itachi Uchiha, one of the most feared shinobi in the world, a man whose name made villages lock their gates, with the regard of a general reviewing a skirmish report from an irrelevant front. "Tell your masters in the shadows," Naruto said. His voice was level, conversational. "The Emperor is coming for them." Itachi looked up, through the blood, through the pain, through the humiliation of having his greatest weapon turned against him by a child who had not even activated a visible technique. He looked up at Naruto Uzumaki, and behind the mask, behind the years of pretense and sacrifice and playing the role of villain for the sake of a village that would never know, something registered that looked a lot like relief. He had been carrying the weight of protecting this boy in secret, of being the hidden shield between Akatsuki and the Jinchuriki, of preparing to die so that Sasuke would have the power to protect what Itachi could not. Looking up at those golden eyes, Itachi realized with absolute certainty, this boy did not need protecting, had never needed protecting. The shield Itachi had been trying to be was unnecessary. The weapon he was trying to forge Sasuke into was redundant. He said nothing. He pulled himself to his feet with the wall's support, blood still streaming from his eyes, and walked toward the hole in the wall where Kasame was groaning back to consciousness in the street. They left, without another word, without another attempt. Jiraiya was standing in the doorway of their room. His hair was loose, toad oil was shimmering on his right hand, his stance was full combat ready. He had arrived prepared for the fight of his life. He looked at the blood on the wall where Itachi had been. He looked at the hole where Kasame had gone through. He looked at Naruto, standing untouched, unbothered, not a hair displaced, and the combat-ready stance slowly, slightly sheepishly, relaxed. "So," Jiraiya said, his voice carrying the specific tone of a man whose pride is taking a very particular kind of damage, "I take it you didn't need backup." "I appreciate the sentiment," Naruto replied without turning around. Jiraiya barked a laugh. It was not entirely voluntary. It was the kind of laugh that escapes when the absurdity of a situation exceeds your ability to process it seriously. "Right," he said. "Okay, cool, good talk." They found Tsunade in a gambling town, drunk, lost, and carrying a grief so old it had calcified into her bones. The last Senju, the greatest medical ninja who ever lived. A woman who could crack the earth with her fist and heal any wound with her hands. Reduced to a wandering drunk because everyone she loved had died, and the village that killed them kept asking her to come back and lead it. Naruto looked at her across the bar table. She looked back. Her honey-brown eyes were glazed with sake and sharp underneath it, a predator pretending to be sedated. "You're Minato's kid," she said, her voice flat. "Jiraiya's dragging you around on the same stupid quest he always does. What do you want?" "I want you to stop hiding," Naruto said. Tsunade's eyes sharpened. The sake glaze thinned. "I have walked worlds where entire civilizations fell because their strongest chose comfort over duty," Naruto continued. "You are the strongest medic this world has produced. Your village needs healing. Your choice to hide is cowardice, wearing the mask of grief." The table cracked under Tsunade's fist. The sake cups jumped. Jiraiya winced. You don't get to talk to me about. Dan is dead. Nawaki is dead. Their deaths were tragedy. Your response to tragedy is the measure of your worth. At present, your response has been to drink yourself into irrelevance while the village that produced you falls apart. I offer you something different, purpose beyond grief, a cause larger than memory. Tsunade stared at him. Her fist was still on the cracked table. Her eyes were very wide. No one had spoken to her like this in decades, the bluntness of it, the complete absence of tact or apology or negotiation. Just truth, delivered with the weight of a man who had no patience for self-pity because he had seen too much of it destroy too many people. Who the hell are you? She whispered. I am the Emperor of Mankind, Naruto said. And I am telling you to stand up. Tsunade looked at this 12-year-old boy in white and gold with eyes that had seen 38 millennia and something in her chest, something that had been frozen for a very long time, cracked. She did not agree immediately. She argued. She tested him, threw a punch that could crater a mountainside to see if his words matched his capability. Naruto caught her fist in his palm without moving his feet. The impact cratered the ground beneath them, but the boy's arm held like a pillar driven into the bedrock of reality. Tsunade's eyes went very round. She agreed to return to Konoha. Sasuke defected on a night with no moon. The Sound Four, Orochimaru's personal bodyguards, came for him in the darkness, whispering of power, of the curse mark's potential, of the revenge against Itachi that Orochimaru could make possible. Sasuke listened because listening was all he had left. The gap between himself and Naruto had destroyed his confidence in the Uchiha path. The loss of the curse mark's promise, burned away by golden fire in the forest, had been replaced by Orochimaru's agents with a fresh mark, a fresh whisper, a fresh promise that somewhere outside Konoha's walls lay the power he needed. He left through the village gates at midnight. Naruto was awake. He had been tracking Sasuke's chakra signature since the day they were placed on the same team. A constant background awareness, like knowing where a loose bolt is on a machine you are responsible for maintaining. The moment Sasuke's signature moved past the village walls and began heading northeast, Naruto opened his eyes in his apartment and stood. He dressed in white and gold. He stepped out of his window and onto the roof, and then he was moving, covering distance at a speed that left no trail, no disturbance, only the faintest shimmer of golden light that faded as quickly as it appeared. He reached the Valley of the End before Sasuke. The two statues, Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju, the founders, the first gods of the shinobi world, loomed over the waterfall in the darkness. The water roared. The spray caught what little starlight existed and turned it to diamonds in the air. Naruto stood on the water below Madara's statue, hands clasped behind his back, his white tunic untouched by the mist. He waited. Sasuke arrived 10 minutes later. The Sound Four were unconscious behind him somewhere, intercepted in the forest by forces Sasuke did not see. He landed on Madara's head, a deliberate choice of symbolism that communicated everything about where his mind was. He was wearing armor provided by the sound. His curse mark was at stage 1, black flame patterns spreading across his skin from the seal on his neck. His Sharingan was active, 3 tomoe, red, burning in the darkness. His face was set in the particular expression of a boy who has made a decision and will not be moved from it regardless of consequence. He looked down at Naruto. Naruto looked up at him. You choose the path of the mutant and the heretic, Sasuke. Sasuke's jaw tightened. I need power to kill Itachi. You stand in my way. Step aside or I will destroy you. You were offered the light of reason, Naruto responded. His voice was even, almost sad, if sadness were an emotion the Emperor indulged in. You chose the other thing. Sasuke activated the curse mark to stage 2. The transformation was violent, his skin darkening to gray, his hair growing, his sclera turning black, his chakra exploding outward in a wave of corrupted purple energy that shook the valley. 2 massive hand-shaped wings erupted from his back, bat-like, dark, spreading wide as his body lifted off Madara's head and hung in the air above the waterfall. His chakra reserves quadrupled. His speed doubled. The curse mark's full demonic form, the gift of Orochimaru, the price of the soul, he came down from above. Black Chidori blazing in his left hand, a lightning blade that crackled with the purple-black energy of the curse mark, its sound a screaming buzz like 1,000 birds being murdered simultaneously. He descended like a falling star, his wings folded back for speed, his arm extended, the black Chidori aimed directly at Naruto's chest. The strike that had punched through solid rock walls. The strike that merged Uchiha lightning with cursed power. His ultimate technique, Naruto manifested the armor. The psychic power armor formed in an instant. Golden plates locking into place around his body. Pauldrons snapping into position over his shoulders. Greaves forming around his legs. Gauntlets sealing over his hands. A visor slid over his face. Golden, featureless, radiating the warmth of a sun compressed into human shape. The Emperor's blade ignited in his right hand. Golden fire roaring along a blade that existed as pure will. He did not dodge the black Chidori. He swung his armored fist to meet it. The collision happened in a single frame. Sasuke's lightning blade, all that cursed power, all that rage, all that ambition compressed into a single point of electrical death, hit the golden gauntlet and discharged harmlessly into the psychic plating. The armor absorbed the lightning like a lake absorbing a thrown stone. Zero damage, zero resistance. The technique simply ceased to matter upon contact. But Naruto's fist kept moving. It connected with Sasuke's chest, the full weight of imperial psychic force behind a closed golden gauntlet, delivered with zero hesitation and absolute intent. The sound barrier broke. The thunderclap rolled across the valley, bouncing off the canyon walls, echoing and re-echoing. A single tremendous crack of sound that was heard in the nearest town 12 miles away. Sasuke's ribs did not crack. They were pulverized. The structural integrity of his rib cage collapsed under a force designed to break things far harder than human bone. His wings, those massive cursed appendages, were stripped from his back by the shockwave, torn free at the base and dissolving into purple smoke as they separated from his body. The curse mark stage 2 transformation was broken, peeling away from his skin in patches, the corrupted chakra scattering. The force carried Sasuke backward, 100 meters across the surface of the water, his body skipping like a stone, hitting the surface 3 times before the final impact drove him downward and created a crater in the river. Water erupted upward and outward in a column, then rushed back in to fill the gap, and Sasuke was at the bottom of it, broken, detransformed, his Sharingan flickering and failing. The golden fire on Naruto's blade extended, a single pulse wave, targeted, precise, racing across the water's surface and finding Sasuke in the crater. The fire wrapped around the curse mark on his neck like fingers closing around a parasite. It burned. Orochimaru's influence, the genetic modification, the chakra corruption, the soul connecting Sasuke to the snake, all of it burned under the golden fire. The curse mark was not suppressed. It was destroyed. Every trace of it incinerated at the DNA level, burned out of Sasuke's body so thoroughly that it had never existed. Sasuke lay in the crater as the water rushed back over him, paralyzed. His ribs were gone. His wings were gone. His curse mark was gone. His stage 2 transformation was gone. Everything he had grasped at, every shortcut, every offer of corrupted power, every whispered promise from a snake, was ash. He was looking up through the water at the golden figure standing on the surface above him. And his expression had moved past anger, past pride, past the defiance that had carried him this far. What was on his face now was something he had never allowed himself to feel, the recognition that he was small, that everything he had been building toward, the revenge, the power, the hatred of his brother, was the concern of an insect compared to what was looking down at him. Both statues shook. The shockwave from the initial impact, the fist meeting the Chidori, had traveled outward through the canyon walls and into the stone foundations of both monuments. Madara's statue cracked at the waist. Hashirama's split at the neck. In slow, grinding cascades of stone, both statues came apart. The two gods of the old shinobi world collapsing into rubble that tumbled down the cliff faces and crashed into the water below. The waterfall itself disrupted as the stone foundation shifted, water spraying outward in all directions before finding new paths down the broken rock. When the dust settled, the Valley of the End was unrecognizable. The statues were gone. The waterfall was a cascade of smaller streams finding their way through rubble. The cliff faces on both sides bore the scars of the shockwave. Cracks running through the stone like spiderwebs, Naruto dismissed the Emperor's blade. The golden armor remained, radiant, undamaged, unmarked. He stood on the water's surface and looked down at Sasuke in the crater below. A long moment passed. The water settled. Sasuke's eyes, normal now, black, his Sharingan deactivated, stared up at the golden visor above him. Naruto turned away. He walked across the water toward the shore. The armor dimmed as he moved, the golden plates dissolving into light, the visor retracting, his white tunic visible beneath as the psychic construct faded. By the time he reached the bank, he was just a boy in white and gold again, hands behind his back, gold eyes forward. From the tree line above, they came. Shino emerged first. His insects had tracked Team 7's movements through a network that spanned 20 miles, every Kikaichu a relay point, every colony a signal node. He had been following Sasuke's defection from the moment it began. He stood on the cliff edge with his coat collar raised and his hands in his pockets, and his covered eyes fixed on Naruto below, with the steady regard of a mind that processed the world as data, and had decided long ago that this particular data point was worth following to the end of the earth. Choji came next, moving through the trees with a speed and power that would have shocked anyone who remembered the uncertain, underestimated boy from the academy. The Sound Four, Sasuke's escort, had been dealt with before they reached the valley. Choji's partial expansion jutsu had rendered all four unconscious in under 30 seconds. He stood on the cliff edge beside Shino, his frame larger than it had been months ago, his posture carrying the confidence of someone who had been told he mattered and had decided to believe it. Yakumo appeared on the opposite bank. Her presence was almost invisible, a testament to the genjutsu mastery that now operated under her complete control rather than controlling her. She had been holding a perceptual barrier over the surrounding area for miles, ensuring that no one who should not see what happened at the valley would see it. She stood with her hands clasped before her, her eyes clear and bright, the shaking that had defined her life conspicuously absent. And last, arriving from the south, his sand settling around his feet like a cloak being lowered. Gaara, he stood at the water's edge. His gourd was on his back. His pale green eyes, no longer rimmed with the bruised purple of insomnia, no longer wild with the demon's whispers, were fixed on Naruto with something that defied simple simplification. Loyalty? Yes. Devotion? Yes. But more than either of those, understanding. The understanding of one person who had been saved, looking at the person who saved them, and knowing with absolute certainty that they would follow that person into any war on any world against any enemy. Naruto stood on the shore and looked up at them, his four Primarchs assembled on the broken edges of the Valley of the End. Behind him, the ruins of two god statues. Below the water, a traitor lying in a crater, his old path burned to ash, his future an open question with no easy answer. Around them, the valley itself, reshaped, destroyed, rebuilt by the force of what had happened here tonight into something new and unrecognizable. Shino watching with an analytical mind that nonetheless felt the weight of this moment, the significance of it, the historical mass of it, pressing against his logical framework and bending it towards something that felt like faith. Choji standing tall, taller than he had ever stood in his life, his chest forward, his shoulders back, the uncertainty of the boy he had been replaced entirely by the certainty of the warrior he was becoming. Yakumo with her mind whole and her power hers, and her eyes reflecting the golden light of the boy below with the clarity of someone who knows exactly where they belong. Gaara on Naruto's left like a sentinel, silent, steady, the sand drifting in lazy patterns around his feet, his face carrying the serenity of someone whose war has ended and whose service has just begun. Naruto turned his face toward the horizon. The sky beyond the valley was lightening, the faintest edge of dawn beginning to creep above the distant mountains, turning the gray into gold, painting the clouds in colors that matched the fire behind his eyes. A new day arriving at the exact moment that it was needed. The timing was either coincidence or the universe acknowledging what had just happened here. His voice carried across the valley without effort. Every word landed with the weight of an emperor's decree, the same weight that had once launched fleets across the void between stars. that had united a fractured species under a single banner, that had declared the imperial truth to a galaxy full of gods and demons and told them all to kneel. "The age of shinobi is dead," Naruto said. "The unification wars have begun. We march to claim the stars." The dawn broke fully behind him as the words settled over the valley. Golden light, real light, sunlight, arriving in concert with the declaration as though the sun itself was answering, poured across the broken landscape and painted everything in warmth. On the cliff edge, Shino bowed his head. A single, precise acknowledgement. Behind his collar, something that was definitely a smile. Beside him, Choji slammed his fist against his chest. A salute that came from somewhere instinctive, from something the golden fire had placed inside him that knew exactly what this moment meant. Across the water, Yakumo closed her eyes and let the warmth wash over her. Her lips moved. A single word, too soft to hear, that might have been Emperor. And Gaara, standing at Naruto's left, his sand drifting in patterns that caught the dawn light and turned it to gold, simply stood. Present, loyal, ready, a weapon that had found its wielder. A broken boy who had found his purpose. A soldier standing at the beginning of something that would reshape the world. The valley of the end was behind them. The ruins of the old world crumbling into the water. The statues of dead gods reduced to rubble. The era they represented. The era of clans and villages and Kaj and endless tribal warfare, ending in the growing light of morning. What lay ahead was something none of them could fully see yet, but they could feel it, the shape of it, the scale of it, the absolute inevitable momentum of a force that had already conquered one galaxy and was now turning its gaze upon a world that had never seen anything like what was coming. The Great Crusade had its generals. Its emperor stood at the front. And the dawn was theirs. The dawn held for exactly 4 minutes before Naruto began walking. He moved down the shattered cliff face where Hashirama's statue had stood hours ago, his white tunic catching the early light, his gold sash trailing behind him like a pennant. His feet found purchase on the rubble without searching for it, each step landing where it needed to land, gravity itself making way. Behind him, 4 figures followed. Shino descending through a cloud of Kikaichu that formed a spiral staircase of living insects beneath his feet. Choji leaping from boulder to boulder with an ease that defied his mass. Yakumo walking a path through the rubble that seemed to form itself ahead of her, Genjutsu smoothing stone into stairs. And Gaara carried on a platform of sand that flowed over the wreckage like a golden carpet unrolling. Sasuke's body was in the crater still, unconscious, breathing, his ribs knitting themselves back together with the slow insistence of Uzumaki residual healing chakra, a gift the seal had given him during their time on the same team, whether either of them intended it. Choji descended into the crater and lifted the Uchiha over one shoulder the way a man lifts a sack of grain. The weight was irrelevant. Sasuke dangled, limp, his arms swaying with each of Choji's steps. They walked east, toward Konoha. Toward the gates that Sasuke had left through hours ago, with betrayal in his heart and a sound escort at his back. The forest road stretched ahead of them, littered with the unconscious bodies of the Sound Four. Tayuya crumpled against a root system with her flute bent in half. Kidomaru webbed to a tree by his own silk turned back on him. Jirobo half buried in a crater Choji had put him in. Sakon and Ukon separated and splayed across 2 different clearings. Yakumo's genjutsu had stopped them from running. Choji's fists had stopped them from fighting. The gate guards, Izumo and Kotetsu, the eternal pair, saw them coming from half a mile out. 2 Chunin who had seen strange things in their careers, but had never seen anything like the procession approaching. A boy in white and gold, walking at a pace that suggested ownership rather than approach, flanked by 4 figures who moved like an honor guard, one of them carrying the village's last Uchiha over his shoulder like a piece of recovered equipment. Izumo reached for his communication scroll. Kotetsu's hand went to his weapon pouch and then fell away. The pressure preceded the group by 30 meters. A weight in the air that told their shinobi instincts everything their eyes had already confirmed. Whatever was walking toward them was above their ability to address, above their ability to question, and above their pay grade by a margin that made resistance feel like standing in front of weather. Naruto walked through the gates without acknowledging them. His four walked behind. The morning streets of Konoha, merchants opening shops, civilians heading to early markets, a village that had just survived an invasion and was still finding its feet, went still as the procession passed. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A baker holding a tray of rolls in his doorway watched the golden-eyed boy walk past, and the tray tilted in his grip, 2 rolls falling to the ground unnoticed. At the hospital entrance, Naruto stopped. Choji set Sasuke's body on the front steps with a gentleness that contradicted the ease with which he'd carried it for miles. The medical staff inside saw a genin deposited like a delivery, looked through the glass doors at the group who had left him there, and scrambled. The Hokage Tower was 3 blocks north. Naruto covered the distance in 2 minutes of walking that felt like 2 hours to every person on the street who watched him pass. His aura was expanding, a deliberate choice, the Emperor broadcasting his presence through the village like a signal fire in the psychic frequency. Every shinobi in Konoha with sensor training felt it. Every jonin felt a tightness in their chest they could not explain. Every Anbu operative on morning patrol adjusted their route toward the tower without being ordered to, drawn by instinct toward the center of whatever was generating that much pressure. He entered the tower through the front door. The receptionist, a chunin named Akane who had held the desk for 11 years, looked up from her morning tea and found golden eyes looking through her, her mouth open to deliver the standard visitor greeting. The words died somewhere between her brain and her tongue. Naruto walked past her desk and up the stairs. His 4 remained in the lobby, Shino at the door, Choji beside the staircase, Yakumo at the window, Gaara in the center of the room with his arms crossed and his sand making lazy orbits around his feet. The receptionist looked at the 4 of them, and then at the empty staircase where Naruto had already disappeared, and she put her tea down very slowly and reached for the emergency communication seal beneath her desk. Tsunade was already awake because Tsunade had never gone to sleep. The Anbu report from the Valley of the End had arrived at her desk 4 hours ago. A single operative's account of what he had witnessed from a mile away, written in the clipped language of a man who was trying very hard to describe something his vocabulary was inadequate for. Seismic readings from the monitoring station confirmed that both monuments had collapsed simultaneously. A shock repulse had been detected at a magnitude the sensors were not calibrated to measure. The reading had simply maxed out and stayed there for 6 seconds. She had Shizune behind her. She had 2 jonin guards at the door. Genma Shiranui and Raido Namiyashi, both Tokubetsu jonin, both carrying the wired tension of men who had been told their Hokage might be facing something beyond standard parameters. Her fists were on the desk when Naruto entered. He came through the door without knocking. The jonin guards moved, hands to weapons, bodies shifting to intercept, and then stopped when the golden pressure hit them like a physical force. Genma's senbon, perpetually clenched between his teeth, fell from his mouth. Raido's hand froze on his blade hilt. Naruto looked at Tsunade across the expanse of her desk. She looked back. Her honey-brown eyes were burning with fury and authority, and the particular intensity of a woman who has been given a job she never wanted and will be damned before she lets someone take it from her on their terms rather than hers. She slammed both fists down. The desk split. A crack ran from one end to the other, splinters erupting upward, paperwork scattering. The windows behind her rattled in their frames. The impact registered through the floor. The building itself swaying a fraction of an inch from the concentrated force of a woman who could demolish a city block with her bare hands. "You obliterated the Valley of the End," she said, her voice a weapon in its own right. "You destroyed national monuments. You assaulted a fellow genin with force that broke his skeleton in 9 places. Explain yourself." Now, Naruto stood before her desk with his hands clasped behind his back. His posture was the posture of someone being briefed rather than someone being interrogated. His gold eyes held nothing resembling concern or apology or even acknowledgement that the woman across from him had the authority to demand explanations. "The monuments represented the old order," he said. "I replaced it." Tsunade's right fist came off the broken desk and drove forward, A straight punch aimed at the center of Naruto's face, carrying enough force to powder stone, enough speed to cross the desk-length gap in a fraction of a heartbeat. A punch that had staggered S-rank opponents. A punch backed by decades of taijutsu mastery and reserves of chakra-enhanced strength that made her the deadliest close combat fighter among the Sannin. The fist stopped 6 inches from his face. The air between her knuckles and his nose was solid. A wall of pressure, invisible, absolute, carrying the weight of an ocean compressed into 6 inches of space. Tsunade's arm was fully extended, her chakra flooding her muscles, her strength at maximum output. Her fist pressed against the psychic barrier and achieved nothing. Her knuckles whitened against the invisible surface and moved forward by exactly 0 millimeters. Her eyes went wide. Her pupils contracted. Behind her, Shizune made a sound, a small involuntary inhalation that said everything about what she was witnessing. Naruto looked at the fist suspended before his face. Then he looked past it at Tsunade's eyes. His expression held something that was almost respect, the way an architect regards a well-built wall that happens to be in the path of his planned road. "You are a capable administrator," he said, his voice unchanged from before the punch, his body having moved a total of 0 inches. "The Imperium requires capable administrators. Konoha does not need to burn. It needs to be reordered." He stepped back. The field dropped. Tsunade's fist fell through empty air and her momentum carried her forward half a step before she caught herself on the broken desk. Her arm was shaking, the muscles twitching with residual strain from pushing against something that refused to acknowledge the push. Genma had drawn his kunai at some point during the exchange. He was holding it in a standard combat grip and doing absolutely nothing with it because his combat instincts had arrived at the unanimous conclusion that his kunai was going to accomplish less than Tsunade's fist had. "The unification wars begin with this village," Naruto said. He was at the door now, having moved without visible steps. "I'm giving you the choice to participate rather than be conquered. Think carefully about which you prefer." He left. The guard stepped aside. The door closed behind him with the soft click of a latch settling, and the sound was louder than Tsunade's fists had been. Tsunade stood behind her broken desk for a long time after the door closed. Her right hand was in front of her, fingers opening and closing, feeling the ghost of the barrier that had stopped her dead. Her mind was running calculations she did not want to be running. The kind that a Hokage runs when the threat assessment of a person inside her own village exceeds the threat assessment of every external enemy she has filed in her intelligence system. Behind her, Shizune was holding a clipboard against her chest like a shield. Her face was the particular shade of pale that comes from watching your mentor, the strongest woman alive, be rendered irrelevant in a contest of strength by a 12-year-old who did not unclasp his hands. "Lady Tsunade," Shizune said, her voice thin. Tsunade's hand dropped to her side. She turned and looked out the window at the village below, the rooftops, the streets, the monument faces carved into the cliff. Her village, the one she had agreed to protect when she took this hat. "Get me Jiraiya," she said. "Get me Kakashi. Get me every report filed on that boy since the night of the Kyuubi festival. Everything." She sat down heavily in her chair. The chair creaked. "And get someone to fix my damn desk." Jiraiya brought the intelligence 3 days later. He brought it to the same clearing where Naruto meditated at dawn. Appearing from the tree line with his hands in his pockets and his expression carrying the particular weight of a man who has been processing information he wishes he could unknow. He sat across the cold fire pit from Naruto. The morning light filtered through the canopy above in shafts of gold that happened to match the boy's eyes in a way that seemed less coincidental than it should have. "Akatsuki is moving faster," Jiraiya said. He did not waste time with pleasantries. The time for pleasantries between them had ended somewhere on the road to Tsunade. Pain, the real leader, the one behind Nagato's Rinnegan, has given orders to begin extracting tailed beasts immediately. Your presence has disrupted their timeline. They were planning to move in sequence over 3 years. Now they're accelerating to months. Naruto was watching the tree line. His posture was formal even in meditation. Spine straight, hands on his knees, gold eyes tracking something in the distance that Jiraiya could not see. "You understand what pain is," Jiraiya said. He did not make it a question. A broken man wearing God's clothes, Naruto answered. His gaze returned to Jiraiya. He has 6 bodies and calls it divinity. I have seen true gods. He is a man with a powerful technique and a great deal of grief. Jiraiya was still. His large frame, usually animated with his personality, was motionless in the way a person becomes motionless when every nerve is paying attention. He's the most dangerous person alive. Was my student. Nagato. The Rinnegan was supposed to bring peace. I believed in him. He was the most dangerous person alive, Naruto said. He stood. His white tunic fell into place without a wrinkle, the gold sash catching the morning light. He will be the most dangerous corpse I have left behind. Jiraiya opened his mouth to say something. A warning, maybe, or a plea, or the beginning of a story about a boy with spiral eyes who once wanted to save the world through understanding rather than pain. Whatever it was died behind his teeth. He looked at those gold eyes and understood that whatever argument he could make for mercy had already been weighed and measured by a mind that had 38,000 years of context for evaluating whether mercy was appropriate. He gave Naruto the intelligence instead. Locations, routes, the 2-man teams that Akatsuki deployed. The next target found Naruto first. Kakuzu and Hidan intercepted him on the border road between Fire Country and Wind Country, a stretch of empty highway that ran between 2 cliff faces, the kind of terrain that channeled travelers into a kill box. Kakuzu had chosen the location with the experience of a man who had been an assassin since before the hidden villages existed. Hidan had chosen it because Kakuzu told him to, and because Hidan did not care about terrain, only about the prayer. They materialized from the shadows of the cliff face, 2 figures in black cloaks with red clouds, standing in the road ahead like a toll gate made of killing intent. Kakuzu was tall, his mask covering the lower half of his face, his green eyes ancient and patient above it. Hidan was grinning, his silver hair swept back, his triple-bladed scythe resting on his shoulder, his entire posture broadcasting the particular arrogance of a man who cannot die and has let that fact replace every other virtue. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, Kakuzu said. His voice was flat and professional. You've been causing problems above your station. Leadership wants you collected. Finally, Hidan spun his scythe off his shoulder, the blades catching the light. Lord Jashin is going to love this one. All that chakra, the ritual is going to be exquisite. I'm going to take my time with. Naruto was walking. He had not stopped walking when they appeared. His pace had not changed. His hands remained behind his back, and his gold eyes remained forward, and his stride carried him toward the 2 Akatsuki members at the same unhurried speed he'd maintained for miles. The complete absence of reaction, the total failure to acknowledge 2 S-rank criminals as anything requiring a change in behavior, was more unsettling than any combat stance could have been. Hidan's grin widened. He interpreted the approach as stupidity. He drove his scythe blade into his own palm, blood welling immediately, running down his fingers in a hot stream, and dropped into his stance. The blood hit the road surface and spread, forming the ritual circle of Jashin through some combination of technique and faith. The symbol completed itself in crimson on the stone. In the name of Lord Jashin, golden fire hit the ritual circle before the second word left his lips. It fell from above, a single beam of concentrated psychic force that struck the blood circle and burned inward rather than outward. The fire did not destroy the symbol on the ground. It traveled through the symbol like a signal following a wire, from the circle into the blood, from the blood into the spiritual connection that the blood maintained with Hidan's body, from that connection into the deepest layer of what made Hidan immortal, the curse of Jashin, the spiritual binding that tied his life force to his god's domain, that made his body unkillable, that allowed him to transfer damage through blood ritual. The golden fire found that binding and burned it at the root. Hidan screamed. His body arched backward, spine curving, mouth opening wide, the scythe dropping from fingers that had gone rigid. The scream was unlike anything Kakuzu had heard from his partner in years of partnership. It was the sound of a man whose fundamental nature was being rewritten against his will. The sound of immortality leaving a body that had relied on it for decades. The scream cut off. Hidan's eyes went wide with a recognition that transcended mere pain. He was mortal. He could feel it. The sudden, horrible vulnerability of a body that was made of flesh and would break like flesh and would die like flesh. The certainty of death settling over him like a second skin for the first time since his conversion. Naruto's telekinetic force hit him while the recognition was still forming on his face. A wall of psychic pressure, the same force that had lifted Kakashi off the ground, that had driven Kasame through a building, crashed into Hidan's mortal body at full power. The road beneath him cratered. His body folded around the impact point, chest compressing, ribs giving way with sounds that were final in a way they never would have been 5 seconds ago. He went down into the stone of the road, and the stone closed over him, and he did not rise. Kakuzu had spent 90 years surviving. He had survived by never being surprised, never being sentimental, and never remaining in proximity to a threat. His assessment told him was beyond his capabilities. His assessment was telling him things right now that his pride did not want to hear. He overruled his pride with his survival instinct. The same instinct that had kept him alive through 5 Keiji-era conflicts and attacked with everything simultaneously, all 5 masks released at once. 5 elemental hearts, fire, wind, lightning, earth, water, separating from his back and deploying in a fan formation, each one charging its respective technique. 5 mouths opened, 5 elements fired simultaneously, a combined assault that covered every angle, every escape vector, every possible defensive response. The golden avatar materialized above Naruto's head. It did not form slowly. One moment the air above the boy was empty, and the next it was filled. The massive golden construct of the Emperor, 40 feet tall, its armor burning with light that made the shadows flee in every direction. The avatar's hands moved with a speed that contradicted its size, sweeping through the incoming techniques like a man brushing insects from his arms. Fire, caught in the avatar's left palm and absorbed, the flames dying against golden fingers without leaving a mark. Wind, dispersed by a single exhalation from the avatar's visor, the compressed air scattering into harmless breezes. Lightning, the avatar planted one foot and the bolt grounded through its leg into the earth, discharging in a circle of scorched road. Earth, a stone bullet the size of a carriage hit the avatar's chest plate and crumbled on contact, reduced to gravel that rained down around Naruto's feet. Water, a pressurized lance that could cut steel, evaporated 3 feet from the avatar's surface, the psychic heat turning it to steam that rose harmlessly into the morning sky. Kakuzu's 5-element combination, the attack that had killed Akage, the attack that had ended careers spanning decades, consumed in 3 seconds by something that had treated it the way a furnace treats thrown paper. The golden avatar reached down, its hand, a construct of pure psychic energy shaped like divine fingers, passed through Kakuzu's body, through the cloak, through the skin, through the thread network that connected his stolen hearts to his central nervous system. The avatar's fingers found all 5 hearts simultaneously, the organs that had been ripped from other bodies and wired into Kakuzu's frame, the redundancy system that had made him functionally immortal through regeneration. The avatar's hand closed. The sound was small, a soft, wet compression, 5 hearts crushed at the same instant, 5 lives ending in the same fraction of a second. Kakuzu's eyes went wide above his mask. His thread body seized, every fiber going rigid at once as the central processing network lost all 5 inputs simultaneously. He was dead before his knees hit the ground. He was dead before the masks behind him fell from the air. He was dead before the expression on his face could finish forming what it was forming, which was surprise, genuine surprise. The emotion of a man who had spent 90 years never being caught off guard, being caught completely and absolutely off guard for the first and last time. His body hit the road. The masks clattered down behind him. The morning returned to silence. Naruto's hands were still behind his back. The golden avatar dispersed above him, the golden light dimming, the construct fading, the massive form dissolving into motes that drifted upward and vanished. He looked at the road. 2 craters, 2 bodies, 2 members of the most feared criminal organization in the shinobi world, reduced to obstacles that had already been passed. He stepped around Kakuzu's body and continued walking west. The pace had never changed. The Kage summit convened in the Iron Country, a neutral territory between the 5 great nations, chosen because the samurai who guarded it had no allegiance to any village and would enforce neutrality with steel if required. The building was ancient stone and iron beams, built for conferences that determined the fate of nations. 5 seats at a circular table, 5 delegations in the gallery behind them, guards at every entrance. Tsunade sat in the Fire Country seat. Her expression was the mask of a woman who has spent 3 weeks updating her understanding of the world and has arrived at conclusions she is still processing. Beside her, Shizune held papers. Behind her, Kakashi stood in his jonin vest with one hand in his pocket and his one visible eye carrying the weight of everything he had witnessed since the bell test. The Raikage. The 4th, a man whose body was a weapon forged through decades of lightning nature training, sat in the Lightning Country seat. His arms were crossed. His biceps strained the fabric of his Kage robes. His face held the expression of a man who does not believe anything he cannot hit and is prepared to hit whatever walks through the door until it proves itself unhittable. The Mizukage, Mei Terumi, beautiful and lethal, her dual Keke Genkai sitting behind a pleasant smile, occupied the water seat. The Tsuchikage, Onoki, ancient and small and carrying enough dust release in his palms to atomize a building, floated slightly above the earth seat, his back too crooked for the chair. The Kazakage's seat held a figure that wore the Sand Kage robes and the Sand Kage face. Gaara sat behind the delegation in the gallery's second row, his pale eyes moving between the false Kazakage and the window where he could feel through the sand he had scattered on the windowsill an hour before anyone arrived, that the emperor would appear. Naruto entered without announcement. He came through the main doors while the summit moderator was mid-sentence about protocol, walking past the samurai guards who turned to stop him, and then did not stop him because their bodies refused to obey the order their brains were issuing. He crossed the room, every head at the table turning, every guard tensing, and went to the window. He stood with his back to the room, looking out at the mountains. His white tunic was immaculate. His gold sash caught the light from outside. His presence filled the room the way water fills a container. Total, absolute, leaving no space unoccupied. The moderator tried to speak. "This summit has not authorized." "I did not come to negotiate," Naruto said without turning. "I came to instruct." The Raikage stood up from his seat. The chair did not flip. He controlled the motion, channeling his fury into precision rather than waste. Lightning armor activated across his body in an instant. Blue-white chakra coating every surface of his skin, crackling with energy that made the hairs rise on every person within 20 feet. His killing intent flooded the room, the intent of the fastest close combat fighter among the Kage, a man who had bent steel with his bare hands and fought the 8 tails to standstills. "You are a child who wandered into a room full of sovereign leaders," the Raikage said, each word dropping like a hammer on an anvil. "You have 30 seconds to understand what that means." Naruto turned from the window. His gold eyes found the Raikage and held. The lightning armor crackled and popped. The room was frozen. Every other Kage watching, every guard watching, every delegation member watching with the held breath of people who understand they are about to witness something that will be discussed for generations. "You are a capable warrior," Naruto said. His voice carried across the room with the same effortless weight it always carried. "You protect your people because you love them, and that is worthy. But your strength is the strength of one man. Mine is the strength of 10,000 years." The Raikage charged, lightning release armor at full output, the fastest movement technique in the shinobi world, a speed that generated a sonic boom in the enclosed space, that shattered the stone tiles beneath his feet, that crossed the 30-foot gap between his chair and Naruto's position in a time frame that most Sharingan could barely track. His right fist led, the Liger bomb stance, his signature, an attack that had knocked Biju unconscious. Naruto raised his right hand, open palm, fingers relaxed. The hand came up and the Raikage's fist hit it and the world stopped. The sonic boom arrived a half-second late, slamming into the walls and cracking the stone, blowing papers off the table, knocking Shizune's clipboard from her hands. Every window in the room vibrated in its frame. The air between the fist and the palm compressed and then decompressed in a visible shimmer. The Raikage's fist was in Naruto's palm, held there, stopped there. The lightning armor crackled against golden skin and dissipated harmlessly, the electricity grounding itself through the psychic field and finding nowhere destructive to go. The Raikage's bicep was fully engaged. His deltoid was straining. His entire body was torquing forward, driving every ounce of physical force he possessed into the push. Naruto's arm was relaxed. His shoulder was neutral. His feet had remained exactly where they were, not shifted, not braced, not acknowledging through any physical accommodation that force had been applied to his body. The Raikage pushed. He pushed with everything he had. His face contorted. Veins stood out on his neck and temples. His lightning armor flared brighter. Maximum output, the full reserves of a man who had trained since childhood to become the strongest physical force in the shinobi world. His arm shook with the effort. His teeth ground together. Naruto's hand did not move. The room was silent except for the crackling of lightning and the sound of the Raikage's breathing. Heavy, labored. The breathing of a man discovering for the first time in decades that his maximum effort meant nothing to the obstacle in front of him. "Sit down," Naruto said, and released the fist. The Raikage stepped back. He was breathing hard. His lightning armor was still active, but flickering, the sustained full power output having drained him more than he expected. He looked at his own fist, opening and closing the fingers, feeling the ghost of the grip that had held him, and something happened on his face that his subordinates had never seen. He sat down. His body made the decision ahead of his pride. His legs bent, and his weight settled into the chair that was still intact behind him, and his arms crossed over his chest. His jaw was working, the physical manifestation of a man's ego fighting his judgment and his judgment winning by the thinnest of margins. The Mizukage had one hand raised to her mouth. Her smile had fallen away. Behind it was an expression of raw assessment, a combat veteran evaluating a threat and arriving at numbers that exceeded her parameters. The Tsuchikage was floating lower than before, his back straightening involuntarily, his ancient eyes carrying the recognition of something he had not seen in a very long lifetime. "You can be the first administrators of the new order," Naruto said, his gaze moving across each of them in sequence, "or you can be the last rulers of the old one. The choice has a deadline. It ends when I reach your villages." The Kazekage moved. It was a combat movement, fast, practiced, the motion of a body that was being controlled by strings rather than a brain. The Kazekage's right hand came up, and a burst of concentrated wind release fired from the palm, point-blank range, aimed directly at Naruto's temple, launched without warning or transition from the diplomatic posture the figure had been holding. Inside the Kazekage's body, behind the face, behind the robes, behind the Sankage's physical form, something else was pulling the strings, a familiar presence. Snake-touched chakra threading through dead tissue like puppet wire through a marionette. Naruto exhaled through his nose. His right hand opened. Golden fire ignited in his palm, a small flame, concentrated, focused to a point. He reached forward, not toward the wind technique, which parted around his psychic field and spent itself against the wall behind him, but toward the Kazekage's chest. His hand did not make physical contact. It hovered 2 inches from the robes. The golden fire found the chakra threads inside the body, Orochimaru's threads, that warp-tainted soul fragment piloting the corpse. The snake's consciousness stretched thin across stolen vessels. The fire closed around the threads like fingers closing around a hair, and pulled. The burning took less than 2 seconds. The thread charred from existence. Orochimaru's connection to this particular puppet severed at the spiritual root. The fragment of consciousness that had been operating the body incinerated in a flash of gold that was visible through the Kazekage's skin for 1 instant. The body crumpled. The strings cut. The vessel emptied. The Kazekage's stolen form collapsed forward onto the table and then slid off it to the floor, hitting the stone with the sound of dead weight meeting dead ground. The robe settled around a body that was nothing more than preserved flesh without an operator. The room was very still. "One less snake," Naruto said. In the gallery, Gaara was looking at the fallen body. His sand drifted in slow patterns around his ankles. His expression held everything his voice did not offer. The recognition that the thing which wore his Kage's face and killed his father had just been excised like a tumor from a body. His pale eyes moved from the corpse to Naruto, and in them was something that had been building since the crater, since the valley. Since the first moment golden fire had entered his mind and burned away the madness. Loyalty beyond question. Service beyond doubt. The Raikage was staring at the fallen Kazekage. His mouth was open slightly, an expression his subordinates would later claim they must have imagined because the Raikage's mouth was never open in surprise. His hands were flat on the table. Tsunade was leaning back in her chair. Her arms were crossed. Her expression was unrateable. The expression of a woman who has been given 3 weeks to process what she is witnessing and has used every hour of those 3 weeks and is still coming to terms with it. She said nothing. Her eyes moved from the body to Naruto and back again, and somewhere in that movement a decision was being made that she would not speak aloud for days yet. Onoki, the ancient Tsuchikage, a man who had survived 3 wars and met the original Madara Uchiha in person, was the first to speak after the silence. "What are your terms?" he asked. His voice was neutral in the way that a drawn weapon is neutral. The blade could go either direction. Naruto looked at him, then at each of them. Then he turned back to the window and looked out at the mountains. "Your villages become districts. Your armies become divisions of a unified force. Your borders become roads. Your children train together. Your knowledge becomes shared rather than hoarded." He did not turn back around. "You will govern your districts. You will maintain your cultures. You will keep your names and your traditions and your clan identities. What you will not keep is the right to throw your children at each other in wars over contracts and territory, and the vanity of feudal lords who use your bodies as currency." The room held its breath. "I am coming regardless," Naruto said. "The only variable is whether you are standing beside me when I arrive or lying in front of me." No one argued. The Raikage's jaw worked silently. The Mizakagi's hand was at her mouth again. Onoki looked at the ceiling, and then at the table, and then at the body on the floor, and then at nothing in particular, while his ancient mind turned over the simple arithmetic of survival. The terms were accepted before anyone left the room. Pain came to Konoha on a morning when the sky was gray and the air smelled of rain that had not yet fallen. His arrival was invisible until it became catastrophic. 6 bodies descending from the clouds in formation, the 6 paths of pain, each one a corpse animated by Nagato's chakra rods, each one carrying a different aspect of the Rinnegan's power. The Deva path at the center, the body that had once been Yahiko, Nagato's dead friend, his face frozen in an expression that had been neutral for so long it had become its own kind of grief. The village sensors detected the approach 17 seconds before impact. Warning sirens began. Anbu scrambled to rooftops. Civilians ran for shelters. The response was fast. Konoha had been invaded recently enough that its emergency protocols were still sharp. The Deva path raised both hands above its head. Chakra gathered. A visible distortion. The air bending inward, gravity itself being violated as the repulsion technique charged. Shinra Tensei, almighty push, at maximum force, the technique that had leveled hidden villages. The technique designed to reduce Konoha to a crater and draw the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki out of the rubble. The technique fired. A hemisphere of pure repulsive force exploded outward from the Deva path's position, expanding at the speed of sound, flattening everything in its radius. The first trees at the village edge bent horizontal and snapped. The first buildings in the outer districts began to crack at their foundations. The golden dome went up. It manifested over the entire village, a hemisphere of solid psychic force, golden and visible, shimmering in the gray morning air like a second sky made of light. The dome curved from one edge of Konoha's wall to the other, sealed at the ground, enclosing every building, every street, every person within the village boundaries. The Shinra Tensei hit the dome. The sound was thunder compressed into a single note, a frequency that existed beyond hearing and registered instead as a physical impact in the chest of every person within miles. The repulsive force slammed against the golden barrier and spread across its surface like water hitting glass, running outward along the curve, dissipating at the edges. Every tree within 2 miles of the village flattened. The ground outside the dome cracked in radiating fractures. The shockwave traveled outward and spent itself against the mountain behind the Hokage monument. Inside the dome, citizens felt the impact as a vibration through their feet. They felt the thunder as a pressure in their ears. They looked up and saw the golden curve above them, a ceiling of light, a shield of something warm and impossible, holding the sky at bay. A woman in the market district dropped to her knees. She was looking up at the dome with tears running down her face because she understood what had just happened. The village had been hit with something that should have killed everyone in it, and something had stopped it. And the color of the thing that stopped it was the color of the boy's eyes. The boy they had thrown rocks at. The boy they had locked out of their shops. The boy whose apartment door they had painted with words that should never be directed at a child. The golden dome was his. The shield over their lives was his. Every person in that village who had ever looked at Naruto Uzumaki and seen a demon was now standing inside his protection, their lives held in his hands, and the irony was so massive it could have crushed them flatter than the technique it was blocking. Naruto walked out of the village gates. The dome remained behind him, maintained without his presence. The psychic energy self-sustaining once established, a standing order that would hold until he told it to release. He walked through the gates and onto the road beyond, and looked up at the sky where the 6 paths of pain were descending. 6 bodies, different ages, different builds, different faces, all dead, all animated, all carrying the spiral pattern eyes of the Rinnegan. They landed in a semicircle before him, the Deva path at the center, the animal path to its right, the human path to its left, the Naraka, Prita, and Asura paths flanking. 6 bodies, Naruto said, looking at the formation. His hands were behind his back. His gold eyes moved across each corpse puppet with the same evaluative gaze he had applied to every opponent. Reading them, measuring them, finding the answers before the questions were fully formed. One soul, I have met gods with more imagination. The Deva path spoke. Nagato's voice emerged from Yahiko's dead mouth, a voice carrying grief compressed into conviction, pain processed into philosophy, loss transmuted into a worldview that demanded the entire world share in its suffering. You believe you are different, Pain said. Every conqueror believes they are the exception, that their violence is righteous, that their order is the one true order. The Rinnegan eyes held something human behind the technique, something wounded and genuine that bled through the dead face. I have learned the truth that no conqueror accepts. Only through shared pain, only when every soul understands loss can there be peace. Naruto listened. He let every word land. He stood in the road with the gray sky above him and the golden dome behind him, and he let a broken man speak his broken philosophy to its completion. Then, you loved your friends. Their deaths broke something in you. And from that break, you built a philosophy that asks the world to suffer so it can understand your loss. He paused. One beat of silence in the gray morning. That is the most elaborate way I have ever seen a man refuse to grieve. The Devapath's face changed. The mask of divine certainty cracked. A hairline fracture in the expression. A flicker behind the Rinnegan that was all Nagato. A reaction that Pain had spent years training himself to never show. The fight began. The Devapath fired Shinra Tensei at close range. A focused repulsion burst aimed directly at Naruto's center mass, launched from 15 feet with enough force to fling a person through a mountainside. The air between them distorted as the technique crossed the gap. Naruto stepped forward into it. The repulsive force hit his psychic field and parted around him, flowing past his body the way river water flows past a stone that will never move regardless of current. He walked through the technique while it was still active, each step bringing him closer to the Devapath. The Shinra Tensei still firing and still achieving nothing. His armored fist materialized, the psychic power armor forming around his right hand in an instant, golden plating locking over his knuckles and fingers. He drove that fist forward into the Devapath's sternum. The impact sent the body backward at a speed that left a visible trail in the disturbed air. It hit the village wall 200 meters behind its starting position and punched through. The the stone caving inward around the point of impact, a crater 20 feet deep forming an ancient masonry that had been designed to withstand siege techniques. The Deva path was embedded in the wall, its chest caved, its arms hanging limp. The animal path bit its thumb. Blood hit the ground. A summoning array bloomed across the road surface, and from it rose a creature, massive, chimeric, a fusion of forms that existed only through Pain's jutsu. It towered above the rooftops, its mouth opening, its legs driving it toward Naruto with the blind aggression of a tool being pointed at a target. The golden avatar appeared at quarter size, 10 feet of golden construct, compact and efficient, forming above Naruto's head like a guardian-made manifest. The avatar's right hand reached out, closed around the summon's head, and compressed. The creature's skull collapsed between golden fingers. The body beneath went slack and began dissolving into smoke before it hit the ground. The human path came from behind, fast, silent, its hands extended, reaching for Naruto's skull. Soul removal, the technique that physically extracted the soul from a living body through touch, that could rip the life from a Kage in seconds. Its fingers found Naruto's temples, they found nothing. The fingers pressed against the skin and found no purchase. The soul beneath was too vast, too anchored, too deeply rooted in 38,000 years of existence to be pulled by a technique designed for mortal souls. The human path's hands pushed and pulled and found themselves trying to remove a mountain from the earth with their bare fingers. The feedback, the psychic recoil of attempting to grip something that existed on a scale beyond the technique's parameters, burned up the chakra pathways in both arms instantly. Naruto turned his head. His gold eyes found the human path's face. A single pulse of psychic force, a focused projection of imperial will, concentrated to a point and fired through his gaze, struck the body between its Rinnegan eyes. The chakra rods maintaining its animation melted. The body dropped. The Naraka path opened the ground. The king of hell, the massive spiritual entity that served as Pain's judgment and restoration engine, rose from the earth behind Naruto. Its mouth gaped, its tongue extended, its eyes, ancient, spiritual, existing between dimensions, opened and focused on the back of Naruto. Naruto turned to face it. The king of hell looked at the emperor of mankind. A moment passed. Something between the spiritual entity and the golden-eyed boy happened in a frequency that existed below visible interaction. A communication, a recognition, a hierarchical assessment that occurred in the space between seconds. The king of hell closed its mouth. Its tongue retracted. Its massive form lowered back into the ground, sinking through the stone road and returning to whatever dimension it occupied between summonings. The Naraka path, the body that channeled this entity, collapsed as its connection was severed from the other end. The spiritual entity had chosen to deny service. The Prita path attacked from the left, running forward with its hands extended. The Prita path's absorption technique active and visible as a shimmer around its palms. The technique that absorbed any chakra-based attack. The technique that could drain a Kage's reserves in seconds of contact. The technique that made its user immune to ninjutsu of every kind. Naruto walked into the absorption field. The Prita path's hands made contact with his chest. The absorption technique activated at full power, pulling, draining, attempting to siphon the energy radiating from this target. The energy flowed into the Prita path's body, and continued flowing, and continued. The body began to shake. The absorption channels, designed for finite inputs, designed for techniques that had beginnings and ends, were receiving a constant stream of psychic force that had no beginning, no end, no boundary. The Prita path was drinking from a river that had no bottom. The body seized, every muscle locked, the chakra pathways throughout its frame overloaded, the equivalent of a cup being poured into by a waterfall. The Rinnegan in its eyes flickered and went dead. The body toppled sideways, overloaded beyond function, and hit the road in a heap of burned-out tissue and smoking chakra rods. The Asura path launched itself forward, the mechanical body, the path of modification and weaponry, its arms splitting apart into missile launchers and blade arrays, firing a barrage of projectiles and chakra beams at Naruto from every angle simultaneously. Naruto raised one hand. Every projectile stopped in midair. Every beam bent. The telekinetic field caught everything the Asura path had fired and held it. suspended in space, a constellation of weapons hanging frozen around Naruto's body like ornaments. He closed his fist. Every weapon reversed course. The Ashura Path's own arsenal returned to it, from every direction simultaneously, fired with the same force it had been launched with, plus the additional velocity of telekinetic acceleration. The impacts destroyed the body from the outside in. Armor plating shredded, limbs separated. The mechanical corpse came apart under its own weapons and fell to the road in pieces. 5 bodies down. The Deva Path alone, still embedded in the wall, its Rinnegan still active, Nagato's consciousness still watching through its eyes. The Deva Path pulled itself from the wall. Stone fell around it. Its chest was caved, but it was still mobile. The Rinnegan's animation technique keeping it functional despite damage that would have killed a living person. It raised both hands above its head. Chibaku Tensei, a black sphere launched from its palms, small, dense, the gravity core of the planetary devastation technique. It rose into the gray sky above the village and activated. Gravity inverted around it. The ground began tearing upward, chunks of road, slabs of earth, sections of the village wall, all ripping free and rising toward the sphere, accumulating, building. A false moon growing in the sky above Konoha, drawing in everything within its range. Naruto watched it grow. He raised one hand toward the sky. A single pulse of golden psychic force fired upward, a beam of concentrated imperial will, targeted at the core of the technique with the accuracy of something that could identify and target a single atom across a continent. The beam hit the gravity core, and the Chibaku Tensei's pulling force reversed in a single frame, outward rather than inward. The accumulated debris did not fall. It scattered, flung outward in every direction at terminal velocity, dispersing into the countryside miles from the village like dandelion seeds in a hurricane. The sky was empty again in 3 seconds. Naruto walked toward the Deva Path. "You are a man who could have rebuilt the world," he said. His pace was unhurried. His voice carried across the distance between them, with the weight of someone delivering a verdict rather than making an observation. "Instead, you burned it, because burning it was easier than healing from it." He placed his hand on the Deva Path's forehead. Golden fire entered through the dead skin and traveled, following the chakra rod connection backward, through the broadcast signal that linked this body to its operator, across miles and miles of transmission path, through walls and terrain and distance, until it found the source. Nagato. The real Nagato. Skeletal and broken, his body destroyed by the Rinnegan's power, his lower half impaled on a walking machine that kept him mobile, his life sustained by machines and willpower alone. The fire did not burn him. It burned around him. It found the outer path connections, the 6 threads running from his body to the 6 paths, the technique that allowed him to animate corpses and fight through them. The fire severed each thread individually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each one burning away like a candle wick consumed from both ends. All 6 bodies hit the ground simultaneously across the battlefield. The Deva Path, still under Naruto's hand, went limp and slid down the wall it had been bracing against, its Rinnegan eyes going dull. Miles away, inside a hollowed-out tree converted into a mobile command post, Nagato gasped. His hands gripped the arms of his machine. His Rinnegan blazed and found nothing. 6 connections severed, 6 weapons gone. His primary combat method rendered inert. Beside him, Konan was on her feet, paper already forming in the air around her. 600 billion explosive tags held in suspension through a technique she had spent years perfecting for this exact contingency. Naruto arrived. He covered the distance between the village and Nagato's location in the time it took Konan to deploy her paper person of God technique. One moment, he was at the village wall. The next, he was standing before the hollowed tree, the paper storm already filling the sky above him, an ocean of white tags stretching across the horizon, covering 2 kilometers, rigged to detonate in sequence for 10 full minutes at maximum coverage. Konan looked at him through the paper storm. Her amber eyes, steady, devoted, carrying 20 years of loyalty to the man in the machine behind her, found his gold ones. "You protected him because you loved him," Naruto said. "That loyalty is worthy." His eyes held hers through the rising paper. "Stand aside." Konan did not stand aside. She detonated. The explosion began at the center and radiated outward, A chain reaction of 600 billion tags, firing in sequence, each one adding its force to the next, creating a rolling wave of destruction that was designed to burn for 10 full minutes and leave nothing alive within its radius. The heat was immediate and total. The sound was beyond sound, a sustained roar that existed as vibration rather than noise. Trees within 30 kilometers flattened from the pressure wave. The earth beneath the blast zone compressed downward 3 meters. The psychic dome appeared around Naruto's body, a sphere of golden light, tight and personal, a skin of absolute protection that the fire washed over and did not penetrate. For 10 full minutes, he stood inside the inferno. For 10 full minutes, the most powerful paper bomb technique ever devised spun itself against a wall of psychic force and accomplished nothing beyond heating the air inside the dome by 2 degrees. The blast ended. The smoke rose. The landscape around Naruto for 2 kilometers in every direction was ashen glass, the ground fused by heat, the trees gone, the terrain reduced to a flat plain of scorched earth. Naruto was standing in the center. His tunic was spotless. His hair was unruffled. Konan was on her knees at the edge of the blast zone. She had shielded herself and Nagato with the last of her paper, a cocoon that had barely survived the fringes of her own technique. Her chakra was gone. Her paper was gone. She was breathing in shallow gasps that spoke to complete exhaustion. Naruto stood in front of her. He looked down at the woman who had just thrown everything she had at him. Every technique, every preparation, every contingency she had spent years building, and found it insufficient. Nagato is alive, he said. He will serve the Imperium as a medical engineer. His Rinnegan has value in healing. You will serve as his guardian. These are instructions. Konan looked up at him. Her amber eyes were wet. Her face was streaked with ash and something else, the residue of a conviction burning away in real time. She had spent 20 years believing that Pain's path was the only path, that Nato's vision was the only answer. She had watched that vision dismantled in minutes by a child who had walked through her ultimate technique without blinking. But he was letting Nagato live. That truth landed somewhere in her chest and stayed there. The man she loved, the broken boy she had followed since childhood, the friend she had chosen over everything else the world offered, was alive because the Emperor chose to let him be. The argument she had been building, the justification for continued resistance, the loyalty that demanded she fight until her last paper was spent, had its foundations removed. She lowered her head. Behind her, in the ruined tree, Nagato's machine was still functioning. His skeletal body was conscious, his Rinnegan open, his breath coming in the labored rhythm of a man whose body had been failing for years. He had felt everything, every path severed, every technique bypassed, every belief challenged by a voice that spoke with the weight of something older than his grief. The war against pain was over. It had lasted less than 20 minutes. Naruto found Orochimaru's main base in 3 days. Jiraiya's intelligence network pointed him west, toward a mountain range on the border of Rice Country, toward a tunnel system that burrowed beneath the stone like a parasite embedded in living tissue. The base was enormous, a labyrinth of corridors and laboratories and holding cells, staffed by 300 modified soldiers, guarded by Jonin-level sound operatives, protected by ceiling arrays that Orochimaru had spent decades refining. Naruto walked to the entrance, a massive stone door sealed with a 5-point barrier that required blood from specific individuals to open. He placed his palm against the stone. The golden fire entered the barrier seals. It burned through the blood requirements. It burned through the locking mechanisms. It burned through the structural integrity of the stone itself. The door did not open. It ceased to be a door. The material losing cohesion, crumbling inward, falling into the corridor beyond as rubble and dust, and the memory of what had once been an obstacle. Inside, the first wave of guards arrived. Modified humans, their bodies altered by Orochimaru's experimentation, their cursed marks active, their eyes holding the particular emptiness of people whose autonomy has been compromised by a stronger will. 20 of them, armed, enhanced, operating on combat protocols drilled into them through years of conditioning. Naruto walked forward. His hands remained behind his back. The golden fire rolled ahead of him like a tide coming in. A wave of warmth and light that spread across the floor and up the walls, and found the cursed marks on every modified soldier in its path. The fire entered through the marks and burned. Each connection to Orochimaru, the spiritual threads, the chakra modifications, the soul-level bindings that tied these people to their creator, ignited and was consumed. The soldiers stopped mid-charge. Their cursed marks, the source of their enhanced power, the leash that kept them loyal, burned away from their skin. The black patterns receded and vanished. The enhanced chakra that had been flowing through their systems cut off. They stood in the corridor. 20 people suddenly returned to themselves, their weapons raised against a boy who was already past them and continuing down the hall. Their eyes blinked, their hands lowered. Their bodies settled onto the ground one by one, sitting, slumping, the sudden relief of freedom from a controlling force making their legs unreliable. Naruto passed through room after room. Each one held more soldiers. Each time, the golden fire preceded him. Each time, cursed marks burned away and weapons lowered, and people sat down with expressions of bewildered freedom on their faces. An army of hundreds, rendered harmless without a single strike, without a single drop of blood, without a single person needing to die. The laboratories came next. Rows of tanks holding specimens, shelving units of scrolls containing research data, medical equipment stained with fluids that spoke to decades of experimentation without ethical constraint. Naruto walked through these rooms, and the golden fire touched everything, burning the active experiments, freeing the conscious specimens still trapped in fluid, destroying the cursed seal infrastructure that connected every subject in the facility to their master. He descended deeper, level after level, corridor after corridor. The base was a mile deep, and the walk took 40 minutes, and at no point did anything slow him or stop him or require him to do more than walk forward and let the fire do its work. He found Orochimaru in the deepest laboratory. The snake Sanin was in the middle of a body transfer jutsu. The intelligence, the awareness of Naruto's approach, had reached him 12 minutes ago, and in those 12 minutes he had prepared his escape. A new vessel, a perfect body, grown in a tank over years, S-rank chakra capacity, enhanced with Hashirama cells, designed to be the ultimate host for his consciousness. The transfer was 90% complete. Orochimaru's true form, the massive white snake, his real body beneath every disguise and stolen skin, was emerging from the old vessel's mouth, slithering toward the new one. Naruto walked into the laboratory. The white snake's head turned. Yellow eyes, vertical pupils, ancient and cold and burning with an intelligence that had consumed its own humanity decades ago in pursuit of immortality, found the golden ones. Naruto's hand closed around the snake's throat. The grip was physical. His fingers wrapped around scales that were cold and dry and pulsing with chakra, and he lifted. The white snake, Orochimaru's true form, the body that contained his soul, the being that had survived death more times than any creature in the shinobi world, was raised from the ground by a child's hand around its neck. The golden fire entered through the grip. It traveled inward, past the scales, past the chakra pathways, past the physical body entirely. It found the soul, Orochimaru's soul, the consciousness that had been jumping between bodies for decades, the flame that refused to go out regardless of how many times the candle was replaced. The fire found every contingency, every hidden soul fragment tucked inside a cursed mark across the continent, every backup vessel prepared in secondary locations, every dead man's switch designed to activate upon his body's destruction. The fire found them all simultaneously, reaching through the spiritual connections the way it had reached through the chakra threads in the Kazekage puppet, and burned them. Every last escape route, every last contingency, every last avenue through which Orochimaru of the Sanin might cheat death one more time. Orochimaru's yellow eyes were wide. His pupils were dilated to their maximum. His mouth was open and trying to form words, trying to bargain, maybe, or trying to threaten, or trying to do the thing he had always done when cornered, offer something, knowledge, service, a deal. The snake's ultimate survival strategy. Be useful enough to the person who has you that killing you becomes wasteful. The words would have died anyway. The golden fire was already in his throat, burning the chakra pathways that made speech possible. You claimed humanity was your obsession. Naruto said, holding the snake, looking into those yellow eyes from 2 feet away. You experimented on it, twisted it, discarded it when it failed to meet your standards. You called that science. The fire burned hotter. The white scales beneath Naruto's fingers were charring, turning from white to gray to ash, the color change spreading from the point of contact outward, the physical body beginning to follow the soul into destruction. You are the greatest waste of a human mind I have ever seen. He released the snake. Orochimaru's body, the white serpent, the true form, the last vessel, hit the laboratory floor and was still. The scales were gray. The eyes were open and empty. The mouth was frozen in the shape of words that were never spoken. Every cursed mark still active across the continent, in sound bases, in scattered operatives, in subjects who had never been freed, went dead simultaneously. 300 points of connection, extinguished in the same second as the soul that maintained them ceased to exist. The greatest biological heretic the shinobi world had ever produced died in his own basement, held in the hand of a child, unmade by a fire he had never known existed, and could never have designed a defense against. 50 years of planning, 50 years of body transfers, 50 years of cheating death, all of it burning to nothing in a corridor beneath a mountain, while the rest of the world continued turning above. Naruto released the body. It hit the floor. He turned and walked back the way he had come, up through the levels, past the freed soldiers still sitting in corridors, past the destroyed laboratories, past the crumbled entrance. The walk out took the same 40 minutes the walk in had taken. His pace never varied. He emerged into mountain sunlight with his hands behind his back and his white tunic unstained, and the knowledge that the snake would never wear a human face again. Obito Uchiha surfaced in a field outside what had been the Rain Village. The village was imperial territory now. Its towering structures flying white and gold banners alongside the old rain symbol, its population adjusting to a governance structure that asked more of them and promised more in return. The perpetual rain had stopped 3 days after the imperial annexation. Nagato's pain technique, which had maintained the weather as a sensory barrier, deactivated along with everything else. For the first time in decades, the people of Rain saw sunshine. Obito chose this location because symbolism mattered to him, even if he would never have admitted it. He appeared in the center of the field, the orange spiral mask catching the unfamiliar sunlight, his single visible Sharingan red and spinning through the eye hole, his Akatsuki cloak rippling in a breeze that should have passed through him given his intangibility technique. He was tired. The exhaustion was bone deep and years old, and had nothing to do with physical energy. He was tired of the plan, tired of the mask, tired of being the hand behind the curtain. He had spent 15 years building toward a single moment, the revival of the 10 Tails, the infinite Tsukuyomi, the dream world where Rin was alive and the rock had never fallen and the hole in his chest had never been made, and now that moment was receding. His tools were being taken from him one by one. Nagato was captured. The tailed beasts were being protected. Orochimaru, his unreliable ally, was dead. The shinobi world that was supposed to be too fractured and too weak to resist was unifying under a banner that burned with the same golden light that had started dissolving his organization months ago. Naruto arrived from the east, walking, always walking, his stride carrying the same unhurried certainty it had carried since the morning after the Valley of the End. They stood across from each other in the field, 50 meters of grass between them. The sun overhead, alien and unwelcome after decades of rain country cloud cover. "You think you're saving humanity," Obito said. His voice came through the mask with the particular timbre of a man who is saying something he has rehearsed and believed for so long that it sounds true regardless of whether it is. "I've heard that before. Every conqueror believes that." Naruto looked at the mask, at the single red eye visible through the spiral hole, at the body language beneath the cloak, the slight forward lean, the weight on the balls of the feet, the stance of someone who has already decided this confrontation will end in combat and is past the point of alternatives. "You hide your face," Naruto said, "because if you show it, you have to be a person again. And being a person means admitting that what you're building is a grave for 8 billion people." Obito's Kamui activated. The space-time distortion wrapped around his body, the technique that made him intangible, that allowed physical matter to pass through him without interaction, that had made him effectively unkillable in every engagement for 15 years. His body shimmered and blurred at the edges, the visual representation of existing between dimensions. Kunai, jutsu, taijutsu, raikiri, every technique that had ever been directed at him, all passing through, all finding nothing to contact. The golden fire hit him. It passed through his intangibility as though the technique did not exist, because the golden fire operated in soul space, in the dimension of the self, the frequency of the spirit, the layer of reality where Obito's soul remained anchored, regardless of where his physical body was phased to. The fire found the soul, and the soul found itself burning. Obito gasped. His Kamui flickered. The first time in 15 years that his concentration had broken. The first time the technique had wavered. The intangibility cut out for a fraction of a second. In that fraction, the telekinetic force arrived. A wall of psychic pressure, golden and absolute, slammed into Obito's body the instant it became tangible. His feet left the ground. His body traveled backward across the field, grass tearing from the earth in his wake. He hit the ground 50 meters from his starting position and carved a trench through the field that was 3 feet deep and 20 feet long. He was on his feet immediately, Kamui reactivating, his manjikyu spinning, his body phasing back into the dimensional gap. The mask was cracked. A line ran from the left edge of the spiral to the bottom, and through the crack his face was visible. Scarred tissue, the half-rebuilt flesh that Hashirama cells had grown over the damage from the rock slide. He attempted the full Kamui, the offensive version, the one that pulled targets into his pocket dimension. His right eye blazed, and the space between him and Naruto began to warp, reality itself folding, a vortex forming, the entrance to the personal dimension opening its mouth. Naruto's psychic force found the pocket dimension. The compression was instant and total. The Emperor's will, focused, absolute, carrying the weight of a mind that had navigated the warp for millennia, closed around Obito's dimensional space like a hand closing around a soap bubble. The space-time technique that Obito had relied upon for his entire career as the masked man, the dimension that was his arsenal, his escape, his home between missions, collapsed inward, imploded, folded in on itself under psychic pressure that treated dimensional barriers the way gravity treated paper. Obito screamed behind the mask. The dimensional collapse was felt in his body like having an organ removed. The phantom space that had been connected to his eyes since the day Madara gave it to him, gone, crushed out of existence. His Kamui flickered and died. The intangibility, the technique that had made him untouchable, ceased to function because the dimension it interfaced with was gone. He stood in the field, solid, tangible, vulnerable. For the first time in 15 years, Obito Uchiha could be touched. His Sharingan was still spinning, the Mangekyo pattern burning in his right eye, pulling at chakra reserves that were depleted by the dimensional collapse. He pulled from the Hashirama cells that made up half his body, the white Zetsu matter, the artificial tissue that Madara had grafted onto his broken frame, and channeled it into Susanoo. The armored warrior rose above him, a towering figure of purple-blue chakra, its ribcage closing around his body, its arms manifesting weapons of solid energy. The Uchiha's final defense, the technique of those who have awakened the Mangekyo in both eyes. Naruto manifested the golden avatar, full size. The construct of imperial light materialized in the field opposite the Susanoo. Golden armor against purple-blue chakra, ancient psychic force against Uchiha legacy technique. They stood at equal height, 40 feet of light facing 40 feet of energy. The Susanoo's arm drove forward, a blade of compressed chakra aimed at the avatar's chest. The golden avatar caught the blade in one hand. The psychic construct's fingers closed around the chakra weapon and held it, the blade pressing against the golden palm and going nowhere, the force behind it meaningless against the Emperor's will given physical form. The avatar's free hand drove forward. The fist punched through the Susanoo's ribcage. The chakra construct buckled inward, ribs collapsing, the structural integrity of the technique failing under a single hit from a force that existed above it in every hierarchy that mattered. The Susanoo came apart, Its armor shattered outward in fragments of purple light that dissipated before they hit the ground. The golden avatar reached down. Its hand closed around Obito, holding him, lifting him, the massive golden fingers wrapping around his body without crushing. Naruto's psychic force pressed into him, a vice of will, holding him immobile while the golden fire moved in and began its work. It found the Hashirama cells first, the artificial tissue that had been grafted onto Obito's body, the white Zetsu matter, the genetic material that gave him his regeneration, his stamina, his ability to survive damage that would kill any normal person. The fire separated it from his original tissue, burning the grafted cells away layer by layer, distinguishing between what was Obito and what was Madara's modification, with the precision of a sculptor removing stone to reveal the shape beneath. Obito screamed again. The mask cracked further, another line running through the spiral, pieces beginning to fall away, revealing more of the face beneath, the scarred cheek, the rebuilt jaw, the eye that was hidden behind the solid half of the mask. Then the fire went deeper, past the physical modifications, into the psychic architecture, the ideology, the constructed identity, the mask behind the mask. The fire did not burn thoughts, it burned the walls around them. The compartmentalization that allowed Obito to be Tobi and Madara, and the masked man and the architect of the Moon's Eye plan, the carefully constructed separation between who he was and what he was doing, those walls burned. And what was behind the walls was a boy from Konoha, a boy who had wanted to be Hokage, a boy who had loved a girl named Rin and a friend named Kakashi and a teacher named Minato, a boy who had been crushed by a rock and rebuilt by a monster and told that the world deserved to end because the girl he loved had died. The mask fell away, piece by piece, the orange spiral breaking apart and hitting the ground beneath the avatar's grip. Obito's full face was visible, both sharing and open, tears streaming from both eyes, his mouth open in a sound that had moved past screaming and arrived at something rawer, something that was half grief and half relief, and half the sound of a 15-year delusion breaking apart. The golden avatar set him down, the psychic force released. Obito's knees hit the grass and his hands followed, and he was on all fours in the field, his Hashirama modifications gone, his pocket dimension destroyed, his mask in pieces around him, his ideology in pieces inside him. What remained was human, entirely, painfully human. Naruto descended from the avatar's dissolving form. He landed before Obito on the grass. This man who had orchestrated the fourth shinobi war that never came, who had been the hand behind pain, who had planned to end the world's consciousness. This broken creature on his hands and knees in a field. The most dangerous people are those who are certain they are acting from love, Naruto said. He was looking down at Obito with an expression that contained something complex, something that was neither mercy nor contempt, but existed in the territory between them. Obito looked up. His face was wet. His Sharingan was spinning without purpose. His mouth was working but producing nothing coherent. Live, Naruto said. Not because you deserve it, because you are a reminder of what grief does when it is given too much time and too little wisdom. The Imperium will find a use for reminders. Obito's head dropped. His forehead touched the grass. His shoulders shook with sobs that came from somewhere so deep they had been accumulating since the day the rock fell and the world ended, and a boy decided that if his world was over, then everyone's world should end with it. Naruto turned and walked away across the field. Behind him, in the grass, Obito Uchiha cried for the first time in 15 years. The tears fell on earth that was seeing sunlight for the first time in decades. Both things were overdue. Madara Uchiha arrived like a natural disaster putting on a face. The Edo Tensei resurrection had been activated by Kabuto, Orochimaru's surviving acolyte, now operating alone, now throwing his final weapon at the approaching crusade in a gambit that was equal parts desperation and scientific curiosity. The technique pulled Madara's soul from wherever dead souls went and placed it back in a body of infinite chakra and infinite regeneration. And the body landed in the center of the Imperial Advance's front lines, like a meteor wearing Uchiha robes. His first action was a swing of his gunbai. The war fan, the legendary Uchiha weapon, swept through an arc that covered the entire visible front of the marching formation. The wind release stored within it, discharged in a crescent wave that was 300 meters wide. The front three lines of the advancing force, Imperial soldiers, former shinobi reorganized under the new banner, were swept off their feet and flung backward. The ground cracked for a mile in the direction of the swing. Trees on the horizon went flat. Madara looked over what he had done. His eternal Manjikyu Sharingan was active, the unique pattern burning red in both eyes, carrying the weight of a man who had been the strongest of his era and knew it. His Rinnegan was manifesting in his left eye, purple ripples over red, the combination of powers that made him something beyond a shinobi. He was looking for one person. "I have been watching," Madara said. His voice was the voice of a man who had waited on the other side of death for something worth returning for. A 12-year-old carrying a 38,000-year-old soul. The universe has a sense of humor. He stood in the wreckage of the front lines with his war fan over his shoulder, his hair flowing in the wind of his own destruction, his posture carrying the absolute self-assurance of a man who had never once in his entire existence, living or dead, questioned whether he was the strongest thing in any given space. He was about to receive an answer to that question. "Come," Madara said, and his Rinnegan pulsed. "Show me what you actually are." Naruto arrived from the sky. He descended from above, having been a mile behind the front lines and now above the battlefield in the span of a heartbeat. The psychic power armor was fully manifested around his body. Golden plates locked into position, the full Imperial war form deployed without restraint or modulation. The Emperor's blade burned in his right hand, the psychic weapon at maximum extension, the golden fire roaring along a blade that was 20 feet of concentrated will. The psychic aura flared at full output, the first time in this world that Naruto had released everything. Every limiter removed, every consideration of collateral abandoned. The battlefield was a battlefield, and on battlefields the Emperor wore his armor. The golden light was visible from every village in the world. A second sun, burning above the earth, descending toward a man in Uchiha robes who was smiling at the sight of it. Madara activated perfect Susanoo. The construct rose around him, the complete manifestation, the armored warrior that stood taller than the tailed beasts, that carried a sword capable of splitting mountain ranges. Blue-purple energy coalescing into armor and weapon, and killing intent that pressed down on the earth hard enough to crack bedrock. The perfect Susanoo drew its sword and swung upward, meeting Naruto's descent with a rising slash that carried enough force to cleave a continent. The Emperor's blade met the Susanoo sword in the sky. The collision was a new kind of physics. The shockwave expanded outward in a perfect sphere from the point of contact, a visible distortion in the air that grew and grew, reaching the ground below and compressing it flat, reaching the clouds above and parting them in a circle that expanded until the entire sky above the battlefield was clear. For 20 miles in every direction, the force of two unimaginable powers meeting pressed the world flat. The Susanoo sword held for 2 seconds. Then the golden fire ate through it, the Emperor's blade consuming the chakra construct from the point of contact inward, the psychic force overriding the Uchiha technique inch by inch. The sword shortened, the flame advanced. Madara's eyes narrowed. He released the broken sword and activated wood release. From the Hashirama cells in his resurrected body, the DNA of the first Hokage, stolen decades ago, a forest erupted. Advent of a world of flowering trees filled the battlefield in an instant. 1,000 towering trees rising from the earth, their canopy releasing pollen designed to render entire armies unconscious, their roots spreading like a net beneath the ground. Naruto's golden fire moved through the forest at the speed of thought. Every root ignited, every trunk burned, every branch became ash, and every leaf became a cinder, and the pollen in the air turned to golden sparks that drifted harmlessly downward. The forest that had grown in seconds died in fewer. The technique, an S-rank wood release capable of ending wars, burned away like morning frost meeting sunlight. Madara watched his forest die. His expression shifted, the smile gaining an edge, the interest deepening. He was enjoying this. For the first time since his resurrection, something was requiring his full attention. He raised both hands. The Rinnegan in his left eye blazed. Gravity above the battlefield changed. Something pulling at the sky. at the space beyond the sky. Two shadows appeared in the atmosphere above, growing, descending. Tengai Shinsei, the technique that pulled meteors from orbit, two of them, each one kilometers across, each one carrying mass enough to annihilate everything beneath it for 100 miles. They descended through the cleared sky, visible from the ground as growing shadows that ate the sunlight, their surfaces burning from atmospheric friction, their approach accompanied by a sound like the world ending. The golden avatar manifested at full height. The construct blazed into existence above Naruto. The complete emperor, the full projection, 100 feet of golden light and psychic armor, standing above the battlefield like the concept of authority given physical form. Its hands reached up toward the descending rocks. The first meteor met the avatar's palms. The mass, billions of tons of stone and iron, pressing down against the golden hands. The ground beneath the avatar's feet cratered from the transferred force. The avatar pushed. Its arms straightened against the falling mass. Its feet drove deeper into the earth. The meteor slowed, stopped, hung suspended against the golden palms for one impossible heartbeat. Then the avatar pushed it back. The meteor reversed trajectory, rising, accelerating, driven by a force that exceeded its own gravitational descent. It went up through the sky and kept going, through the atmosphere, through the mesosphere, through the boundary where air ended and void began. It left the planet. The first meteor thrown into space by human hands, the second meteor was still descending. The avatar turned toward it, one hand still raised from the first throw, and drove its palm forward in a single strike. The impact transferred through the rock instantly. A psychic shockwave that propagated from the point of contact through the meteor's entire mass simultaneously. Every molecule vibrated at a frequency that exceeded structural integrity. The meteor came apart, shattering into gravel in midair, a cloud of fragments that rained down over the countryside in a spread pattern that covered miles but harmed nothing. Madara looked at the sky where his meteors had been. "Interesting," he said. The word carried genuine appreciation. The appreciation of a warrior who has spent his existence seeking his equal and has found something that exceeds equality entirely. His Rinnegan blazed one final time. He looked at the moon, the celestial body visible even in daylight, hanging in the cleared sky above the battlefield. The infinite Tsukuyomi required the moon as a reflective surface. Madara activated it barehanded, his will and his Rinnegan and the stolen power of the Sage of Six Paths channeled into the ultimate technique, the one that would end all suffering by ending all consciousness. The technique that was supposed to be the conclusion of everything. Light erupted from the moon's surface. A wave of genjutsu carried on reflected light, designed to touch every living thing on the planet simultaneously, designed to trap every soul in a dream of perfect contentment forever. The light washed across the sky. The golden dome went up over the world, a psychic barrier of planetary scale. The same technique that had shielded Konoha from Pain's Shinra Tensei expanded beyond any previous dimension, reaching the upper atmosphere, covering the entire surface of the earth in a shell of golden psychic force. Every ounce of the Emperor's power projected outwards simultaneously, a shield over all of humanity at once. The infinite Tsukuyomi's light hit the dome. The genjutsu, the technique that was supposed to end the world, scattered across the golden surface like light through a prism. Broken, dispersed, rendered into harmless color that painted the sky in brief aurora before fading. Below the dome, 8 billion people remained awake, remained free, remained themselves. Naruto descended from the dome toward Madara, the psychic power armor at full luminosity, the Emperor's blade at full extension, his gold eyes carrying the weight of a being who had just shielded an entire world with his mind and was coming down from that height to end a fight. Every man who has ever tried to save the world by ending its suffering has made the same mistake, Naruto said, descending. You believe the problem is that people feel too much. The truth is that people like you felt too much and refused to heal. Madara activated everything. His perfect Susanoo reformed, complete, the full armored warrior at maximum height. His Rinnegan channeled all 6 paths of pain through his own body. The abilities that Nagato had spread across 6 corpses, Madara wielded alone. The Sage of Six Paths mode activated. the full power of the sage's legacy flowing through his Edo Tensei form, his body glowing with a chakra that predated the hidden villages by millennia. He rose to meet Naruto in the sky with everything he had and everything he had ever been. They hit each other above the battlefield. The collision was visible from every village in the world. Gold and purple-black meeting in the sky, a flash that burned after images into the eyes of everyone who looked up. A detonation of combined power that produced a shockwave 10 seconds later, a sound that followed 30 seconds after that. The landscape below them, the battlefield, the field, a mile of earth, simply ceased to exist as terrain. The ground pressed flat, compressed downward, a perfect circle of annihilation spreading from the point beneath their meeting. Madara's Susanoo sword swung. The Emperor's blade met it. The weapons clashed and the sky above them rippled. Visible distortions in the fabric of the air. Reality protesting the forces being applied to it from both sides. Madara fought with the accumulated skill of a man who had trained since childhood and perfected every art of war his clan produced. His eternal Manjikyo tracked Naruto's movements. His Susanoo matched the golden avatar blow for 10 seconds. 10 seconds, where the universe pretended this was a contest between equals. Then Naruto's blade found the Susanoo. The golden fire cut through the perfect Susanoo in a single stroke. The blade passed through the chakra construct because the Emperor's weapon was will, and Madara's will, legendary, extraordinary, among the greatest individual wills ever produced by human genetics, was still the will of one man. Against 38 millennia of accumulated purpose, one man's will was a candle against the sun. The Susanoo came apart. The bisected construct separated, top from bottom, left from right, and the purple-blue energy dispersed into the sky like smoke in a wind. Madara was exposed. The Sage of Six Paths mode was still active around his body, the glowing chakra forming a last layer of defense. Naruto drove the Emperor's blade through Madara's chest. The golden fire entered the Edo Tensei body and found the resurrection technique. The binding that kept Madara's soul anchored to the physical world, the impure world reincarnation chakra structure, the tags in the dust, and the soul anchor mechanism. The fire burned it, layer by layer, connection by connection, releasing rather than destroying, freeing rather than killing. Madara, impaled on the Emperor's blade, suspended in the sky above a flattened landscape, looked at Naruto with his Rinnegan and Sharingan eyes. His expression was something extraordinary, the expression of a man who had spent his entire existence, both lives, both eras, both sides of death, searching for something that could match him and finding it at the last possible moment. "You could have been a god," he said. "There are no gods," Naruto answered. "Only man." The callback landed with the weight of a declaration made in an alley 7 years ago. The first words ever spoken in golden eyes, the first truth the Emperor had offered this world, returning now at the moment of its greatest proof. The phrase that had started everything, ending everything. Madara smiled, a genuine expression. The smile of a man who has heard something true and recognizes it as true and accepts it without argument. The Edo Tensei released. His body began to dissolve, the resurrection technique unwinding, the physical form losing cohesion, the soul slipping free of the material world. Madara Uchiha's eyes closed. His expression held the smile. The body broke apart into light, motes of energy rising upward, drifting, fading, a soul departing, a legend ending, the golden fire dimmed, the Emperor's blade extinguished, the psychic power armor faded piece by piece as Naruto descended from the sky. The golden avatar dissolved. The world returned to silence. He landed on the compressed earth. The battlefield was unrecognizable, a flat circle of destruction that extended to the horizon in every direction. The Imperial forces had pulled back during the exchange. They were standing at the edges, miles away, watching the single figure descend from where two titans had met. His white tunic was spotless. His gold sash caught the sunlight that was returning through the cleared sky. His hands went behind his back. His breathing was even. The greatest warrior the old world had ever produced was gone. The battle that decided the era was over. And the Emperor walked away from it the way he walked away from everything. Unhurried, unshaken, with the certainty of someone whose victory was never a question to begin with. The weeks after Madara's defeat were reconstruction. The imperium formed in the spaces between what had been destroyed and what was being built. Representatives from every former hidden village arrived in Konoha, which was becoming less a village and more a capital with each passing day. The infrastructure changed before the architecture did. Communication lines between nations, trade agreements that ignored old borders, training programs that mixed bloodline students from rival clans into integrated units. Tsunade sat at the head of the administrative table because Naruto had placed her there. The fifth Hokage became the first imperial administrator of the Central District, a title she accepted with the expression of a woman who is still deciding whether she agreed to this or was simply present when it happened. The Raikage took the Lightning District with his arm in a sling and his pride in a cast. His first act as district administrator was to open Kumogakure's Jinchuriki training program to imperial integration, a gesture that cost him politically and earned him something he would never have admitted to valuing: respect from the boy in gold. Gaara took Wind Country. He administered from Suna's tower with the same serenity he had carried since the crater, his sand drifting in lazy patterns around his office, his decisions carrying the weight of someone who understood suffering well enough to prevent it in others. The Mizukage took water. Onoki took earth with the particular grumbling of an old man who had outlived every alternative. Nagato worked. His Rinnegan, now directed at creation rather than destruction, was capable of things that the medical corps had never imagined. His outer path, repurposed, could pull damaged tissue toward health rather than death. Konan stood beside him in every room, her amber eyes tracking everyone who approached, her loyalty redirected rather than diminished. Obito was given a garden, a small plot behind the administrative building, accessible only through a secured door. He tended it in silence, growing tomatoes and herbs and simple things that required daily attention and rewarded consistency. Some days Kakashi came and sat on the wall beside the garden and said nothing, and Obito said nothing back. And the silence between them was a wound that was healing in the only way some wounds can, slowly, imperfectly, through proximity rather than words. The Kage Summit Room, the same room in Iron Country where the Raikage's fist had been caught, became the Imperial Council chamber. The 5 administrators sat around the table once a month. Naruto stood at the window. He spoke without turning. The shinobi system is over. What it built, the clans, the bloodlines, the jutsu, the chakra traditions, survives. The part where human beings organize themselves into city-states and throw their children at each other in wars over borders and fire daimyo contracts, that part is over. He turned. The Imperium erases nothing. It unifies under a single law: the survival and advancement of humanity. Every village becomes a district. Every Kage becomes an administrator. Every shinobi becomes a member of the Imperial force. Your children train together. Your bloodlines become shared knowledge rather than inherited weapons. Your borders become internal roads. The Raikage started to speak. Naruto looked at him and the Raikage's mouth closed. The large man exhaled through his nose and crossed his arms, the gesture of a warrior who has accepted a commanding officer and will follow orders, but will be damned if he's going to be happy about every single one. I am also not your enemy, Naruto said. I am the thing your system was always supposed to produce and could never generate. Someone who is for humanity. All of it. Every village, every bloodline, every child born into a clan war they never chose. All of it. Tsunade signed the unification charter. Her hand was steady. Her expression held something that had taken weeks to form, something that existed in the territory between resignation and hope, that acknowledged both the loss of what had been and the possibility of what could become. The Raikage signed with controlled resentment that was becoming, by degrees, controlled respect. Gaara signed with a stillness that communicated absolute certainty. The Mizukage signed with a grace that carried genuine curiosity beneath it. Onoki signed last, his ancient hand shaking slightly, his eyes holding the look of a man who has lived long enough to see the end of one world and the beginning of another, and is choosing to believe the new one might be better. Then Naruto went to find Sasuke. The hospital room was on the 3rd floor. The window faced east, toward the Uchiha district, toward the empty streets and the locked houses and the memories of a clan that had died in a single night. Sasuke was sitting up in bed. His ribs were healed. His body was whole. His eyes were focused on the wall opposite his bed, a blank surface that he had been staring at for 3 days while the world remade itself outside his window. Naruto sat in the chair beside the bed. The silence between them was unlike any of their previous silences. The old silence had been competitive, two boys measuring each other, establishing hierarchy. This silence was something else. The silence after a storm. The silence of two people who have been through something that changed the shape of the air between them permanently. After a long moment, Sasuke said one word. Itachi. He is alive, Naruto said. His voice was even, his gold eyes on Sasuke's profile. He has been dying of a terminal illness for years. Everything he did, the clan, Konoha's order, was to protect you from a truth too large for a child to carry. He made the wrong choice. He would tell you that himself if you asked him. Sasuke's jaw worked. His hands were flat on the blanket, pressing down, the knuckles whitening against the fabric. His Sharingan was inactive. His eyes were black, just black, human, carrying the weight of everything he was hearing. He is in Lightning Country, Naruto said, a village 3 days east of the capital. He is alive enough to travel. The rest is yours to decide. A long moment passed. Sasuke's eyes moved from the wall to his own hands, the hands that had held Chidori, the hands that had reached for Orochimaru's power, the hands that had swung at Naruto in the Valley of the End and found their attack meaningless. The Imperium will want Uchiha eyes eventually, Naruto said. He stood from the chair. His white tunic fell into place. His hands went behind his back. When you are ready, the offer stands. He walked to the door, paused there, did not turn around. The path of vengeance is over, Sasuke. What you build in its absence is entirely yours. He left. Sasuke sat in the bed with his hands flat on the blanket and his eyes on the door that had closed, and the silence filling the room around him like water filling a basin. For the first time since the night of the massacre, the first time since blood on the walls and a brother's eyes spinning in the moonlight, the future was a blank page rather than a list of names to cross off. He did not know yet whether that was terrifying or liberating. It was probably both. The evening came slowly that day. The sun descended toward the horizon in stages, orange to rose to purple, the sky cycling through every warm color the spectrum could produce, painting the clouds in layers that looked like they had been arranged by someone with an aesthetic preference. The village below the Hokage Tower was settling into evening routine. Lights coming on in windows, the sound of dinner being prepared, children being called inside. The imperial banner flew from the top of the administrative building, white fabric with a golden sun, the symbol that had started in the land of waves and now flew over 5 former nations and every territory between them. Beside it, in a gesture that Tsunade had insisted upon, the leaf symbol of Konoha, the old and the new, sharing a flagpole. Naruto stood on the roof of the Hokage Tower, the same roof where Team 7 had met for the first time, the same roof where Kakashi had arrived 3 hours late with his practiced smile. The world below it was unrecognizable from what it had been that day. The boy standing on it was unrecognizable from who he had been. He looked at the sky, not the horizon, straight up, through the purple and into the deeper blue and into the black beyond where the first stars were appearing. Points of light, thousands of them, millions of them, behind the visible ones. The same stars he had navigated by when he led fleets across the void. The same stars his first imperium had charted and named and bled for and died for across 10,000 years of expansion. They were the same stars. They had always been the same stars. Shino came to stand beside him. He emerged from the stairwell without sound, his high collar raised, his hands in his pockets, his covered eyes directed upward at the same sky Naruto was watching. His kikaichu buzzed in patterns across his shoulders that communicated contentment, a frequency Naruto had learned to read over months of partnership. The boy who had been dismissed for having bugs in his body stood on the roof of the highest building in the new capital of the world, and his spine was straight and his presence was steady, and the insects on his skin were singing. Then Choji. He came up the stairs with a bag of chips in one hand and his free hand adjusting the new armor he wore, imperial issue, white and gold, fitted to his frame. which was larger and more powerful than it had been the day a boy in gold had sat beside him on the grass and told him his body was an engine. He settled into position at Naruto's left with the ease of someone who had found their place in the world and occupied it without question or apology. He opened the chip bag. Then Yakumo. She appeared at the roof's edge. Having come up through means that did not involve stairs, her genjutsu mastery allowing her to simply be where she decided to be. Her hands were clasped before her, her eyes clear and bright, the shaking that had once defined her existence absent for so long, now that its memory was fading. She stood at Naruto's right and looked up at the stars with a mind that was whole and vast and entirely, beautifully hers. And Gaara, he arrived last. His sand carried him upward from the street below, a platform of gold-brown granules lifting him to the roof's level and settling him onto the surface with a gentleness that contradicted everything his sand had once been used for. He stood at Naruto's shoulder. His gourd was on his back. His pale green eyes reflected the first starlight. His sand drifted in patterns around his feet that caught the fading light and turned it gold. He was silent, present, loyal, ready. A boy who had been a weapon, who had been a monster, who had been everyone's worst fear, standing on a rooftop beside the person who had seen something else in him and burned away everything that was not that something. 5 people on a rooftop. Looking up, the evening deepened around them. The village sounds faded. The stars multiplied as the blue receded, more and more points of light appearing, the galaxy revealing itself in stages, the universe opening its eye above a world that had spent its entire history looking at the ground. "What comes next?" Choji asked. The chip bag rustled in his hand. His voice was warm, the warmth of someone who had walked through war and come out the other side with his curiosity intact, with his appetite for living undiminished, with the fundamental kindness that had always been his core still burning steady beneath the warrior he had become. Naruto kept his eyes on the stars. A long moment passed. The wind moved across the rooftop. Somewhere below, a child laughed. The imperial banner above them shifted in the breeze, the golden sun catching the last light and holding it. "We build," he said. "We educate. We advance. We eliminate every weakness and every division that makes humanity vulnerable to what exists beyond this world." A beat. The stars above. The world below. The 4 people beside him who had been overlooked by a system that could not see them, who had been told they were less, who had become the finest warriors and minds of their generation because someone had looked at them and seen what was actually there. And eventually, he said, "We go up there." The words settled over the rooftop like a promise, like a map being unfolded, like the first sentence of a story that would take centuries to tell and would be told regardless, because the Emperor of Mankind had said it would be. And 38,000 years of history confirmed that what the Emperor said would be, was. Shino's insects buzzed a frequency that meant acknowledgement. Behind his collar, behind his glasses, the smile that had started forming the day Naruto first sat beside him on a bench was present and full and unhidden. Choji crunched a chip. His eyes were bright. His hand pressed against his chest in the same instinctive salute he'd given at the Valley of the End. A promise renewed, a purpose reaffirmed, the gesture of someone who would follow this path to whatever end it found. Yakumo closed her eyes. Her lips moved, a single word, too soft to hear, offered to the stars. And Gaara stood at the Emperor's shoulder and said nothing, because everything he would have said was visible in his posture, in his presence, in the steadiness of his breathing, in the sand at his feet that turned and turned in patterns that looked, if you watched them long enough, like galaxies. 5 people, 1 rooftop, a world beneath them, a universe above. The Great Crusade had its generals, its emperor stood among them, and the stars were waiting.
Thanks for watching the full movie. If this absolute unit of a story hit different, smash subscribe and turn on notifications. More wild crossovers incoming. Peace.